I wasn't supposed to be home that early. But when your client cancels last minute and your boss gives you the green light to clock out, you don't complain. You take it as a sign to surprise your wife. I parked 2 blocks away. Not because I was suspicious. Just instinct. Or maybe something darker in my gut. I remember laughing at myself, saying, "Relax, Nate. You're being dramatic." I even picked up her favorite tiramisu on the way. As I climbed the front steps, I noticed her heels, those tall red ones she only wore on special nights, thrown beside the door. She never left shoes there. Ever. She was obsessively neat. That's when my pulse skipped. The door was unlocked. I pushed it open slow, quiet. The living room was clean. Music played from upstairs, some sensual R&B crap she usually only plays when she's setting a mood. My first thought was maybe she was planning a surprise for me. Then I heard it. Not moaning. That would have been too obvious. I heard laughing. Her laugh. And a deeper, unfamiliar voice responding. Then the unmistakable rhythm of bodies moving in a way that no married man ever wants to hear from upstairs. I froze. Tiramisu still in my hand. My knuckles turned white around the box. Every logical part of me told me to leave. Don't go up. Walk away. Call her later. Maybe it's not what it sounds like. But another part, something primal, dragged me forward. The stairs creaked beneath my weight like traitors. My breath was uneven, heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The door to our bedroom was half shut. I didn't even need to push it open all the way. I saw enough through the gap. Her bare back, those red heels in the air. Him, some gym-built guy with sleeve tattoos and a smirk like he knew he was destroying something that didn't belong to him. And they were tangled together in a mess of sweat and sheets. Like animals. I dropped the dessert. It hit the hardwood with a thud and a soft splatter. But that wasn't the sound that broke them apart. It was my voice. "So this is what you meant by working from home, huh, Haley?" She shrieked like she'd seen a ghost, yanked the covers around herself, and tried to sit up like the act wasn't already done. The guy didn't even flinch. Just casually reached for his jeans like he was in his own damn house. Haley stared at me. Her face wasn't even red. Not guilt. Not embarrassment. Just annoyance. "Nathan," she said, rolling her eyes. "You weren't supposed to be here." I didn't know whether to laugh or flip the dresser. No sh*t. She stood, half covered in the sheet like she was in some B-list soap opera and gave me that face, her calm down, you're overreacting face. "Look," she started, brushing her blonde hair back, like we were going to have a normal married couple conversation. "We've talked about this. I told you I needed space. I told you I wanted something more open." "No," I growled. "You said you needed time. You said you were emotionally overwhelmed. You said you were figuring yourself out. You didn't say anything about this." She tilted her head like I was a slow student. "Nathan, we have an open marriage. This isn't cheating. You should actually be grateful I'm still your wife." That line hit harder than anything I'd ever felt. Grateful. I repeated. Grateful that my wife is getting railed in my bed by someone who probably can't spell monogamy? The guy finally chimed in. "Hey man, she said it was cool. Chill out." I lunged before I realized it, but Haley jumped in front like she was protecting a puppy. "You're acting like a psycho. Maybe if you were more of a man, I wouldn't need this." That stopped me. Everything stopped. The room went silent, except for the blood pounding in my ears. I stepped back, looked around. The bed where we said our vows meant something. The framed photo of our wedding still hanging above it. The nightstand drawer where I once hid anniversary cards. All of it, a lie. She didn't even care. No tears. No apology. Just a woman who'd already rewritten the rules without telling me, and expected me to be grateful. That's when I knew. Something inside me cracked, but not in the way you'd expect. It wasn't rage. Not yet. It was something quieter, colder. I didn't scream. I didn't hit anything. I just looked at her one more time, memorized the disgustingly calm expression on her face, and walked out the door. But that wasn't the end. Not even close. I didn't go home that night. Well, technically, I left the house, but I didn't feel like I had a home anymore. I drove aimlessly for hours. At one point, I realized I had been looping the same block downtown, engine humming while I sat in the car, gripping the steering wheel like it could stop my world from collapsing. I didn't cry. I wanted to, but it felt like even my emotions were in shock. Like they had short-circuited and left me with nothing but this hollow, burning pit in my chest. I was angry, sure. But more than anything, I was humiliated. That word kept bouncing around my skull. I'd been loyal. Boringly loyal, maybe. I didn't flirt at bars. I never stayed out too late. I brought flowers on Thursdays just because I thought she liked surprises. And all this time, this woman, Haley, was turning our bedroom into a discount motel. The audacity of it. The casualness. That look on her face like I was the problem. I ended up at a 24-hour diner. Sat in the far corner with a cup of coffee that tasted like burnt regret. My phone buzzed. It was her. Not a call. A text. Like I didn't deserve a real conversation. I think we should talk tomorrow when you're calmer. I didn't mean for you to find out that way. I read it again. And again. Didn't mean for me to find out that way? Like I'd interrupted a goddamn business meeting. Like her mistake wasn't the betrayal, just the timing of my arrival. I didn't reply. Instead, I scrolled back through our messages. Birthdays. Memes. Photos of her smiling, making pancakes in my t-shirt. Lies. All of it. Retrospect has a cruel lens. It turns nostalgia into evidence. I eventually booked a motel. Didn't sleep much. Just lay there staring at the popcorn ceiling, wondering how long it had been going on. Wondering how many men there were. Wondering how I missed it. The next morning, I went back to the house, not to confront her again, but to see what else she'd hidden from me. She wasn't home. I took my time. I opened drawers. Searched through her closet. Looked under the bed. And that's when I found it. A black shoebox behind the stack of old sweaters. Inside? A burner phone. My stomach dropped. Photos. Videos. Conversations. She'd been documenting everything. From different hotel rooms, in different cities. One guy called her his road wife. Another asked her if her loser husband ever suspected. There were timestamps. This had been going on for over a year. AF *** King year. She wasn't just cheating. She was living a double life. And I was the prop in her charade, the husband she kept around for stability while she played out her fantasy version of 50 Shades in the shadows. The front door clicked. She walked in humming, holding a smoothie like she just finished yoga. She didn't see me at first. When she did, she jumped. Nathan. Jesus, you scared me. I held up the phone. She froze. Where did you get that? I didn't answer. I just let her read the look on my face. Her eyes narrowed. You went through my stuff? She asked, like I was the one who crossed the line. That's what you're focusing on right now? I asked, voice calm in a way that scared even me. She sighed. Look, I told you this isn't cheating. We're not in the 50s, Nate. People explore. I deserve to explore. You were never enough, but I was willing to settle because I thought you were safe. Turns out you're just possessive. I blinked. Possessive? Yes, she said, crossing her arms. You think just because we're married you own me? Newsflash. I'm not your property. I'm a woman. With needs. You said we had an open marriage, I said. When? When did you say that? Because I sure as hell don't remember the conversation where I agreed to you screwing half the state behind my back. She actually rolled her eyes. Ugh. It's not my fault you're emotionally unavailable. You've been boring, Nate. Predictable. Do you know how suffocating it is to live with someone who always plays it safe? I laughed. Just once. A bitter, sharp sound. So your solution was to turn our marriage into a carnival? Without telling me. Grow up, she snapped. I stayed because I pitied you. That was it. The last crack in my composure. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I walked over to the bedroom, grabbed my suitcase, and started packing. She watched, not saying a word. Maybe she expected me to beg. Maybe she wanted me to scream. But I gave her nothing. At the door, I turned to her. You don't get to rewrite the rules and then call me crazy for not playing along. She smirked. Bye, Nathan. Don't forget your pride. And I walked out, suitcase in one hand, a box of truth in the other, my heart finally going cold. But the story wasn't over. Not even close. The first night away from her was quiet. Too quiet. You'd think after discovering something like that, catching your wife mid-act, hearing her say words that carved through your chest like a jagged blade, you'd fall apart. But I didn't. Not right away. I just sat in a cheap motel room, fully clothed on top of the covers, staring at the dark ceiling and letting the silence scream louder than my thoughts. I didn't want to call anyone. Not my brother, not my best friend, not even my old college roommate who'd always hated her from the start. I wasn't ready for the told you so. I wasn't ready for the pity in their voices. I wasn't ready for anything that sounded like sympathy. Because sympathy would make it real. Instead, I went back through the burner phone. I don't know why. Maybe I was looking for something, some explanation, some sign, some moment when she'd started becoming this woman I didn't know. Maybe I was just torturing myself. There were texts from 4 different men, photos, explicit conversations. One of them, some guy named Brock, of course it was Brock, had even called her his queen of chaos. She liked that. She said she liked destroying control freaks. I think that one was about me. Then there was a video I hadn't noticed the first time. It was a short clip, a selfie-style video of her in the mirror, still buttoning up her blouse. She blew a kiss to the camera and said, "Heading back to the boring husband now. Gotta pretend to be a wife for a few hours." I watched that one twice. The first time, I just stared. The second time, I noticed the timestamp. That was our anniversary. I had taken her to that vineyard she always talked about. Got us a private tour. She said it was one of the best weekends of her life. She even cried during dinner and told me how lucky she was. And the whole time, she was sending videos to some clown who probably couldn't spell the word commitment. That's when something in me snapped, not loudly, not violently, just permanently. I wasn't going back. That much was clear. But I also wasn't going to let her skip away like nothing happened. I had been silent too long, calm too often, naive for too damn many years. And now, I had her lies. Her words. Her own recordings. My marriage wasn't a memory anymore. It was a case file. The next morning, I called my lawyer. "Are you sure?" he asked, after I told him everything. "I'm not angry," I said. "I'm not even surprised anymore. I'm just done. And I want to walk away with my name clean." He told me to keep the phone, download everything, back it up. We'd use it if she tried to play dirty. And she would. I knew Haley. She wouldn't take this silently. Her ego wouldn't let her. She'd spin the story like she always did. She'd become the victim, the neglected wife, the trapped bird, the misunderstood soul who had no choice but to find comfort elsewhere. Sure enough, 3 days later, she showed up at my job. In a tight black dress, sunglasses, crocodile tears ready to go. "Nate," she said loudly in the parking lot. "Can we please talk?" My coworkers were watching. I motioned her to the side, to the corner where nobody could hear us. "You're making a scene," I said. "You just left," she hissed, suddenly dropping the fake sadness. "You didn't even give me a chance to explain." "You explained enough," I said. "With your body. With that camera. With that pathetic excuse of a text." Her jaw clenched. "You're blowing this out of proportion." "No, Haley," I said, stepping closer. "You blew our marriage up. I'm just watching the fallout." She crossed her arms. "So what now? You're gonna make me look like a whore in front of everyone. I don't have to make you look like anything. You already did that yourself." She slapped me, right there in the parking lot. Like a true actress, she gasped after and whispered, "You made me do that." I didn't even flinch. I just stared at her, calm, collected. And I said the one thing that finally cracked her mask. "I'm filing. You'll get the papers soon. And Haley, I'm keeping everything. The house, the dog, the car, the memories. You can have those. I don't want them anymore." She opened her mouth to argue, to scream, maybe to cry. But I didn't wait to hear it. I turned and walked back inside. I didn't look back. Because once you see someone for what they really are, you never want to see them again. I thought walking away would feel like a victory. Like finally breaking free from a prison I didn't even know I was locked in. But the truth is, even when you leave the cell, the weight of it doesn't just fall off. It follows you for a while. People started asking questions. Coworkers, friends, even my mother. They all noticed the change in me, quieter, more withdrawn, a little meaner around the edges. I wasn't the nice guy anymore. I was the guy who didn't smile at meetings, who didn't come out for drinks, who ignored texts. I wasn't trying to be difficult. I was just trying to breathe without drowning in the bitterness left behind by a woman I once called my wife. Haley didn't disappear. Of course not. She started posting more on social media. Photos of her, healing journey, yoga poses, artsy captions about growth, self-love, energy, freedom. She was rebranding herself. From adulterous narcissist to misunderstood goddess. She even posted a black and white photo of us from our wedding with a caption that read, "Love is complicated. Sometimes two souls must part to find themselves again." The comments made me sick. "You're so strong. Sending you light. You deserve to be happy." Nobody knew. Nobody wanted to know. That's the thing about lies. They're prettier than truth. Easier to accept. She was a master at it. She didn't just lie with words. She lied with grace, with posture, with tears that fell on cue. You'd believe her if you didn't know better. Hell, I did. One night, a message popped up on my phone. It was from one of the guys in the videos. His name was Caleb. Generic, Jim Harden jawline. No neck. Baseball cap turned backwards in every photo. Hey man, I didn't know she was married. Just wanted you to know that. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I wrote back. She told you we had an open marriage, didn't she? He replied a second later. Yeah. She said you knew. Said you had another girlfriend and didn't want to go public yet. Said you were insecure. I laughed out loud. A bitter, exhausted sound. I could have guessed it, but hearing it confirmed made something inside me sink just a little deeper. She wasn't just reckless, she was strategic. She covered her tracks by painting me as weak, silent, invisible. She didn't just cheat. She erased me. Caleb offered to testify if it came to court. I thanked him, but told him I didn't need it. I already had more than enough. And then, as if life wanted to twist the knife one more time, I ran into her at the grocery store. It had been about a month since I left. I was picking up something simple, frozen meals, maybe. I hadn't cooked a real meal since walking out. Haley looked the same, perfect makeup, fake serenity, fake sadness behind those hazel eyes. Nathan, she said, like we were old friends. How are you holding up? Better than you expected, I said without looking up from the freezer door. She smiled. You've always been strong. That's one thing I admired. You admired? I repeated. Before or after the hotel rooms? She looked around. Nervous. Not because she felt guilt, but because public confrontation made her uncomfortable. She liked drama in private, where she could control it. I know I hurt you, she said, but I didn't do it to destroy you. I needed something else. Something more. I finally looked at her. You didn't destroy me, Haley. You exposed yourself. There's a difference. She blinked. I kept going. And for the record, I don't hate you. I hate what you turned me into. I hate the version of me that stayed long after I should have left. Her eyes flickered. Not tears, just calculation. She was gauging how much damage control she'd need to do. Maybe she thought this was her moment to rewrite the ending. But I wasn't giving her the pin. I walked away. Didn't look back. Didn't wait for her response. Just walked out into the parking lot, breathing in the cold air like it was something sacred. Like it was finally mine. Later that night, I sat in my apartment, half-furnished, a little dusty, quiet in a way that didn't feel lonely anymore. I looked around and realized something. This silence? It didn't scream anymore. It felt like peace. A week later, the divorce papers were officially filed. My lawyer said it was one of the easiest cases he'd ever handled, thanks to the mountain of ammunition I had. He didn't even need to bluff. The moment Haley's attorney saw the videos, the screenshots, the text she folded. No contest. No claims to the house. No fights over the dog. She wanted to keep things civil, which meant she knew there was no way to win. And still, she couldn't help herself. The night after she signed, she called me. Blocked number. I answered without thinking. Why'd you have to make it ugly? She said. No hello. No apology. Just straight into it, as if I was the villain. I didn't make it ugly, Haley. You did. I just turned on the lights. She exhaled like I'd exhausted her. Like I was the drama. You used to be kind. I used to be married. Silence. Then she softened her tone. That fake, sweet voice she used to pull out when she wanted something. I wish things had been different. They were different, I said. You just wanted more. You'll find someone, she said. You're not as broken as you think. I almost laughed. It wasn't the worst thing she'd ever said to me, but for some reason, it landed wrong. Like a slap disguised as a kiss. She hung up without waiting for me to reply. I sat there with the phone still against my ear, realizing for the first time, she never really listened. Not to what I said. Not to what I felt. She just played roles. And I'd been her longest-running co-star. After that, I blocked her. Not out of spite, out of necessity. Healing doesn't come when the wound keeps calling you at midnight. But healing, that took time. More than I expected. It didn't come in waves, it came in moments. Small, forgettable moments that built something real. The first night I slept without waking up thinking she was beside me. The first time I walked into a store and didn't picture her picking out the cereal. The first time a woman smiled at me in line at the bank, and I didn't feel like damaged goods. I started working out again. Not for revenge. Not to win the breakup. Just because I wanted to feel strong again, like myself. I read books. Cleaned the apartment. Took the dog on longer walks. Let silence sit with me, not haunt me. Then, one night, I found myself standing in front of a mirror. Not flexing. Not rehearsing. Just looking. And I saw me. Not the version she manipulated. Not the man who bent over backward trying to keep her interested. Just me. A little bruised, sure. But still standing. Still breathing. Still here. A friend invited me to a party a few weeks later. I almost didn't go, but I figured, why not? I wasn't hiding anymore. And besides, there was nothing left to be ashamed of. I'd survived something most men don't talk about. I'd loved someone who didn't deserve it, and I'd come out cleaner on the other side. That night, I met someone. Her name was Emily. Brown hair. Warm eyes. The kind of smile that made you feel like you were allowed to start over. We didn't talk about exes. Not that night. We talked about music. Coffee. Stupid things. Things that felt light. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I had to explain myself. I just existed. And she seemed to like that version of me, the quiet one, the real one, the one I'd buried under years of trying to be someone else for someone who didn't care. We exchanged numbers. I didn't rush. I didn't fantasize about the future. I just walked away feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. A quiet, flickering hope. And maybe that's the thing no one tells you. Betrayal breaks you in places you didn't know could crack, but it also shows you who you are beneath the wreckage. The version of you that still wants to fight, to feel, to live, to love again, not blindly, not desperately, but fully, and only when it's right. Because now, I know what I won't accept, and what I deserve. A few months passed. Life, somehow, kept moving forward. There were days where I felt like I was running to catch up with it, tripping over old memories, haunted by echoes of her voice. And then there were days where I didn't think of Haley at all. Not once. And those were the days I started living again. I'd see couples walking in the park, holding hands, laughing at nothing. And instead of feeling bitterness, I'd feel this strange, quiet peace. Because now, I understood something I didn't back then. Not every smile is honest, and not every hand held is sacred. Some people hold hands while hiding knives behind their backs. Emily and I started texting more. Casual. Easy. No pressure. She didn't ask too many questions, and I didn't feel the need to overshare. We just connected. Like two people who had learned the hard way how valuable honesty is. One night, we went for coffee. Nothing fancy. She wore a hoodie and minimal makeup, and somehow, she looked more beautiful than Haley ever did in her high heels and contour. I like this, she said, sipping her drink. This. She smiled. You. Just being here. No act. No trying too hard. You're calm. Real. I didn't know how to respond at first. Compliments felt foreign to me. I'd spent so long being either ignored or manipulated, I'd forgotten what genuine kindness sounded like. I'm still putting myself back together, I said. That's okay, she replied. Sometimes broken things come back sharper. That hit me harder than it should have. We didn't kiss that night. No dramatic ending. Just a soft, unspoken understanding that something good had started. And for once, I wasn't afraid of good things anymore. Then, out of nowhere, Haley resurfaced. Not in person. Online. She posted some long, performative caption about forgiveness. About acknowledging the damage she caused. About allowing space for redemption and growth. It was vague enough to make people feel sorry for her, but anyone who knew the truth could see it for what it was, damage control. The real kicker? She tagged me. Like I was a co-star in her redemption arc. My phone lit up with messages. Did you see what Haley posted? Bro, is she serious? One of my friends called it her Oscar moment. But I didn't respond. Not publicly. Not privately. I let her scream into the digital void. Because silence, I learned, is sometimes the loudest reply. She tried again a few days later. Sent me a message. I miss our talks. You were my best friend. I stared at it. And deleted it. Because no, I wasn't her best friend. I was her shield. Her excuse. Her backup plan. Her audience. And I wasn't playing that part anymore. That was the final thread. It didn't snap. It just unraveled. Clean. And with it gone, I felt something I hadn't felt since the beginning. Freedom. Real, actual freedom. Not the kind she pretended to chase while lying and sneaking around, but the kind you earn when you walk through fire and come out still breathing. I started writing again. Just little things. Journals. Notes. Sometimes poetry that would make no sense to anyone but me. It helped. Getting the pain out. Giving it a name. Making it something I could put on paper and leave there instead of dragging it around inside. One night, I wrote this line. She told me I should be grateful she stayed, but I should have left the moment I had to be grateful for basic decency. I read it 3 times. Then I closed the notebook, and I slept like a man who knew exactly who he was and exactly what he would never tolerate again. Haley was gone, not just physically, but out of my system, out of my future. No more shadow in my bed, no more ghost in my conversations. Just gone. And in her place, a man with scars, but stronger for them. Emily and I didn't become a fairy tale. Not right away. There were no fireworks, no whirlwind romance, no dramatic declarations under the rain. It was slower than that, quieter. And honestly, better for it. I wasn't ready to love someone with reckless abandon. I wasn't ready to leap headfirst into something new, not after the wreckage I'd crawled out of. But she didn't ask for all of me. Not at once. She gave me space. Time. Laughed at my dry jokes, sent texts just to check in, and when I told her I was still healing, she didn't flinch. "I'm not here to fix you," she said one night. "I'm here if you want someone beside you while you fix yourself." That line stuck, because Haley had always made love transactional. Perform, obey, give, and maybe you'd earn a breadcrumb of affection. But Emily? She didn't measure affection like currency. It was just there. Still, the damage Haley left behind didn't just vanish. I'd be lying if I said there weren't moments where doubt whispered in the back of my mind. One night, I caught myself asking Emily where she'd been, not out of curiosity, but suspicion. She noticed. "Do you think I'm lying?" she asked, gently but firmly. I didn't answer, because in that moment, I wasn't seeing her. I was seeing Haley, slipping off those red heels and spinning a lie while brushing lipstick from her neck. Emily didn't snap. She just sat down, looked me in the eye, and said, "You're allowed to feel whatever you feel, but don't punish me for what she did. I'm not her, and I never will be." And she wasn't. That was the difference. I apologized. Not because I was wrong to feel, because I was wrong to let the past drive my present. Over time, I started trusting again. Not in some blind, naive way, but piece by piece. I learned to read silence without assuming betrayal hid behind it. I learned that not every late reply meant secrets. That sometimes, people are just human. And more importantly, I learned to trust myself. Because the truth is, the worst thing Haley ever did wasn't just cheating. It was making me doubt my instincts. Making me second-guess everything I felt, saw, heard. That kind of manipulation stays with you. But now, when something felt wrong, I didn't bury it. I faced it, spoke it, dealt with it. Emily and I started spending weekends together. Walks, movies, cooking dinner instead of ordering takeout. One night, she stayed over. Not because of any big step, but because it felt right. Natural. We laid there, no rush, no pressure. Just her head on my chest, her fingers tracing circles on my arm. "Do you ever think about her?" she asked softly. I didn't lie. Sometimes. Not in the way I used to. Not because I miss her, but because she taught me what I'll never accept again. She nodded. "That's fair." We lay in silence for a while, and then I said something I hadn't told anyone. There was this one night. I caught her in bed with someone, and she had the audacity to look me in the eye and say, "You should be grateful I'm still your wife." Emily froze, then slowly lifted her head, eyebrows raised. "She said that." I nodded. Her eyes narrowed. That woman deserves to step on Legos for the rest of her life. I burst out laughing. The first real, deep laugh I'd had in months. She laughed too. That was the moment I realized. I was done bleeding for someone who wouldn't have blinked if I died inside. Now, I was with someone who didn't just patch the wounds. She helped me remember what it felt like to be whole. I wasn't naive. I knew relationships still took work. But the foundation was different this time. Built on honesty, mutual respect, actual love, not performance. And most of all, choice. I chose her, not because I was lonely, not because I needed to fill the space Haley left behind, but because, for the first time in a long time, I wanted to. And that made all the difference. A year later, I stood in front of a mirror, same man, same eyes, but a completely different presence behind them. The divorce had long been finalized. Haley's name was nothing more than a closed file in my lawyer's cabinet. I hadn't seen or heard from her since that last attempt to rope me into her performative guilt tour, and I liked it that way. There were no more phantom aches. No more waking up in the middle of the night with my heart racing, unsure if I was still in that nightmare. No more rereading her texts, trying to make sense of the senseless. The ghost of her was gone. Not exorcised with fire or rage, but faded. Quietly. Like smoke clearing from a room I didn't realize was filled with poison. Emily was asleep in the other room, curled up next to the dog I'd gotten after the divorce, Buddy, a golden retriever who listened better than most people I'd ever met. And somehow, even that image, her, in my home, peaceful and present, felt like something sacred, something earned. Sometimes, you don't realize how badly you've been starved until someone finally feeds you the real thing. I never told Emily everything. Not the full depth of how broken I'd been, or how many times I'd questioned if I was even lovable anymore. But she never needed all the details to love me anyway. She showed up, over and over, with patience, with humor, with kindness, with truth. And truth, that's the one thing Haley could never give. Looking back, I don't regret it. Not the marriage, not the pain, not even catching her in our bed with someone else. Because as twisted as it sounds, I needed it. I needed to see who she really was so I could finally learn who I was. I used to think betrayal broke me. Now I know, it revealed me. It showed me the cracks in my boundaries, the holes in my self-worth, the way I mistook loyalty for love and silence for peace. It showed me how far I'd been willing to shrink just to keep someone who never deserved me in the first place. And now, I'm done shrinking. I'm done apologizing for expecting respect, for asking for honesty, for needing someone who doesn't just want my presence but values my heart. If there's any advice I'd give to the next guy who finds himself in that same moment, I did. Standing at the door, tiramisu in hand, hearing laughter upstairs, it's this. Don't beg. Don't break. Don't bargain. Walk away with your dignity intact, even if your heart is in pieces. Because dignity will rebuild you faster than denial ever could. And no matter how convincing the performance, no matter how sweet the lies, no matter how long you've loved her, a woman who tells you to be grateful she's still your wife while she's in another man's arms is already gone. You're not losing her. You're escaping her. One day, like me, you'll sit across from someone who actually sees you, who chooses you. Not out of obligation, not out of convenience, but out of real, raw, human love. And when that day comes, you'll realize she did you a favor.
The cold night air hit me like a slap, sharp and unforgiving, jolting me awake. Darkness spread around me, stretching endlessly in every direction. I lay on the ground, barely able to move, every bone in my body aching as if I'd been struck by something heavy. The chill seeped through my skin, making it hard to breathe, each breath sharp and shallow. Fragments of memory began to come back to me in flashes, Jessica's face, her voice, barely more than a whisper as she said, "It's for the best." I could still see her silhouette fading into the darkness, walking away without a backward glance. My own wife, the woman I'd loved, had brought me here, somewhere isolated and desolate, and left without a trace of remorse, like I was nothing. Betrayal didn't feel strong enough to describe what she'd done. She hadn't just turned her back on me, she'd decided to erase me from her life completely. The realization lit a fire within me, anger burning with an intensity one didn't know I had. I couldn't just lie here, waiting for whatever fate she'd planned for me. I had to get out of here, to keep moving, to survive. Summoning every ounce of strength, I forced myself upright. Each step felt like a test, but I stumbled forward, following the dark road that stretched ahead. I had no sense of where I was, no bearings, but one thought kept me moving: I wasn't done yet. Jessica thought she'd left me behind, thought she'd eliminated me from her life like a bad memory. But she was wrong. As I walked, I spotted a glint of headlights far off, piercing through the darkness. Relief washed over me as I lifted my arm, waving frantically, hoping they would stop. The car slowed, and a middle-aged man leaned out of the driver's side, his face lined with concern. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice cautious yet kind. "You look like you've been through something terrible." I need help," I managed, my voice shaky but determined. Someone tried to leave me here." Without a word, he opened the passenger door, and I climbed in, every muscle protesting, but I forced myself to focus. As we drove down the winding road, the reality of what had happened sank in. Jessica hadn't just betrayed me, she had planned for me to vanish, to erase me from her life as if I had never existed. Sitting there, staring out at the road illuminated by passing headlights, I felt a calm resolve settle over me. I was alive, against all odds. And now, I had a chance to make things right, to ensure Jessica understood the gravity of what she'd done. She thought she'd won. But she was wrong. It all started with subtle changes. Jessica had always been reliable, thoughtful, her warmth a constant source of comfort. But over the past few months, I'd started noticing small shifts, the late nights she brushed off as work emergencies, the phone calls she took outside, always with that hushed tone. When I'd ask, she'd wave it away, insist I was overthinking things. And every time, I'd convince myself it was nothing. But there was a gnawing doubt in the back of my mind, something that wouldn't let go. Last night, I found out why. Jessica had left her phone on the counter in her hurry to leave, something she never did. I wouldn't have looked if it hadn't been for the notification that lit up her screen, flashing just long enough for me to catch a glimpse of a message from someone named Chris D. The message read, "Last night was unforgettable. Can't wait for our next," before the screen darkened again. My heart raced, disbelief mixing with a sick feeling in my stomach. Against my better judgment, I picked up her phone and unlocked it. What I found was undeniable. Her message thread with Chris was long, full of conversations that revealed everything, every lie, every late night she claimed was work-related, every cold admission that she was seeing someone else behind my back. The texts were painful to read, casual and intimate, filled with jokes, plans, and promises she'd never shared with me. "You're the only one who gets me, it's such a relief to have you, I don't think he'll ever suspect a thing." My hands shook as I held her phone, each word cutting deeper than the last. She'd rewritten our entire relationship, building an alternate life behind my back. And now, I saw it all, her disregard, her betrayal, her complete lack of remorse. She wasn't just cheating on me, she was erasing me, planning to move on without a second thought. The shock held me captive for a moment, but it quickly gave way to a cold, simmering anger. Jessica thought I was too trusting, too predictable. But she was about to find out how wrong she was. The next morning, I was ready. After everything I'd discovered the night before, sleep was out of the question. Instead, I sat in the quiet of our living room, waiting for Jessica to come down, going over every word, every lie she'd told me. By the time she walked in, I was calm, determined, prepared for whatever game she thought she could play. She looked surprised to see me awake so early, but she quickly masked it with a smile, that same practiced, perfect smile I'd come to see differently. "You're up early," she said, pouring herself a cup of coffee as if everything were normal. I watched her carefully, every movement, every shift in her expression. "Couldn't sleep," I replied, my voice steady. "Too many things on my mind." Jessica glanced up, sensing the weight of my words but feigning innocence. "Something wrong?" she asked, her tone almost too casual. "Oh, just wondering about last night," I said, matching her casual tone. "How was your work meeting?" She paused, just for a second, before she responded, "It was fine. You know how it is with work." Her answer was smooth, too smooth. She was already hiding, keeping her guard up. But I'd seen enough last night to know that nothing she said now would change the truth. "Really?" I leaned forward, letting the tension build between us. "So, that was work with Chris?" Her face went blank, and for a split second, I saw a crack in her facade. But Jessica was quick, recovering almost instantly with a laugh, though it sounded forced. "Chris? I think you're mistaken, Daniel." "Am I?" I asked, pulling out my phone. I scrolled to the photo I'd taken of her messages with Chris, every damning word preserved. I held it up, watching her eyes flicker over the screen as realization dawned on her. She couldn't deny it anymore. Instead of looking guilty, though, her expression shifted to something sharper, harder. Her voice turned cold. "I can't believe you went through my phone." I felt a surge of anger rise within me. She wasn't upset because I'd caught her, she was upset because her lie had been exposed. "That's all you have to say?" I demanded. "After everything I've done for you, the trust, the years together, and this is your reaction? Jessica crossed her arms, her gaze steady, unflinching. Well, maybe if you weren't so boring, I wouldn't have needed to look somewhere else. The words stung, but more than that, they revealed just how far she'd written me off. I realized then that the woman I thought I'd loved was long gone, replaced by someone who saw me as nothing more than a convenience, an obstacle in her path. Is that it, then? I asked, barely able to keep the bitterness from my voice. You've replaced me with Chris, and I'm supposed to just disappear? Jessica shrugged, her expression dismissive. We all have to make choices, Daniel. You just happen to be in my way. Chris understands me in ways you never did. My blood ran cold as I took in her words. She wasn't remorseful, not even regretful. Jessica had already moved on, like I was nothing more than a chapter she'd finished reading. But this wasn't going to end the way she thought. I kept my voice steady. If that's how you feel, then there's no reason for us to keep pretending. But I'll make sure this doesn't end quietly, Jessica. You might think you've won, but you're wrong. For the first time, I saw a flicker of doubt in her eyes, as though she realized that the person standing before her wasn't the same man she thought she could manipulate. She'd expected a broken, defeated husband. But she was going to get something else entirely. As I turned and walked out, leaving her standing there, the resolve I felt was like nothing I'd ever experienced. She'd underestimated me, and that was her first mistake. As I walked away from Jessica, leaving behind the cold facade of our once shared home, the weight of everything hit me like a tidal wave. The adrenaline that had kept me steady during the confrontation began to fade, and a flood of emotions rushed in: betrayal, anger, heartbreak, and a profound sense of loss. I found myself wandering without direction, the world around me blurring as my mind raced. I ended up at a small park on the edge of town, a place we used to visit when we first moved here. The memories of happier times washed over me, the laughter, the plans for the future, the promises we made. It all felt like a cruel joke now, a facade that had crumbled to reveal a stark and painful reality. I sat on a bench overlooking the pond, the still water reflecting the gray sky above. Questions swirled in my mind. How long had she been deceiving me? Was any of it real? The depth of her betrayal was overwhelming. She hadn't just broken our vows, she had tried to erase me from her life entirely. The woman I thought I knew was a stranger, someone capable of calculated cruelty I couldn't have imagined. A part of me wanted to scream, to unleash the torrent of hurt and rage inside. But another part felt numb, as if my emotions were too heavy to bear all at once. I watched a pair of ducks glide across the water, their effortless movement a stark contrast to the turmoil within me. As the hours passed, the initial shock began to give way to a steely resolve. I realized that dwelling on the pain would only give her more power over me. Jessica had made her choices, and now it was time for me to make mine. I couldn't change what she'd done, but I could decide how I would respond. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through old photos, images of vacations, family gatherings, quiet moments at home. Each picture was a reminder of the life I'd thought we shared, a life that was now irrevocably altered. Deleting them felt too final, so instead, I backed them up to a drive and tucked them away, a chapter of my life archived but not forgotten. The sun began to set, casting a golden hue over the park. I took a deep breath, the cool air filling my lungs, and stood up with a newfound determination. If Jessica thought she could break me, she was mistaken. I wasn't going to let her actions define me or dictate my future. On my way back to town, an idea began to form. I decided to reach out to an old friend, Michael, whom I hadn't spoken to in years. Michael was a private investigator, sharp, discreet, and trustworthy. If there were more to Jessica's betrayal, I needed to know. Not out of obsession, but to protect myself from any further surprises she might have planned. I found Michael's number and made the call. After a few rings, he answered, his familiar voice bringing a sense of comfort. Daniel? Wow, it's been a while. Too long, I admitted. I wish I was calling under better circumstances. He listened as I gave him a brief overview, careful to stick to the facts without letting too much emotion seep through. I need your help, Michael. Something doesn't add up, and I have a feeling there's more going on than just an affair. He didn't hesitate. I'm on it. Let's meet tomorrow and go over everything. As I hung up, I felt a glimmer of relief. Taking action, even a small step, helped to alleviate the sense of helplessness. Jessica might have tried to undermine me, but I wasn't going to let her succeed. That night, I checked into a hotel, not ready to return to the house that no longer felt like home. Lying in the unfamiliar room, I allowed myself to process the whirlwind of the past 24 hours. The hurt was still there, raw and pervasive, but beneath it was a resilience I hadn't expected. I thought about others who might have gone through similar betrayals, wondering how they found the strength to move forward. It wasn't just about surviving, it was about reclaiming control over my life. Before drifting off to sleep, I made a promise to myself, would face whatever came next with courage and integrity. Jessica had shown me who she truly was, and while it was a painful revelation, it also freed me from any illusions. I could rebuild, start anew, and perhaps find a path that led to a better version of myself. This wasn't the end of my story, it was the beginning of a new chapter. The next morning, I met Michael in a small, quiet cafe on the outskirts of town. He was exactly as I remembered, sharp-eyed, perceptive, and exuding a calm confidence that immediately put me at ease. Michael had always been good at reading people, and I could tell he was assessing me as I sat down. "Rough night?" he asked, his tone neutral but understanding. I nodded, not bothering to hide the fatigue etched into my face. "You could say that. Jessica, well, she's not the person I thought she was. I need to know just how deep this goes." Michael listened as I recounted the past few weeks, from the late-night meetings to the message from Chris, and the confrontation that had shattered the illusion of our marriage. I could see the gears turning in his mind, his eyes focused and calculating. "Look," he said finally, leaning forward, "if Jessica's already gone to the lengths of trying to leave you stranded, we're dealing with more than a simple affair. You're right to be cautious. But I need to ask, are you sure you want to know everything?" His question caught me off guard, but I didn't hesitate. "Yes. I need to know exactly who she is and what she's capable of." Michael nodded, a faint smile playing at the corner of his lips. "All right. I'll dig into Chris's background and see what we're dealing with. In the meantime, keep a low profile. If she has someone like him involved, you don't want to underestimate her." As he left, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. The shock and hurt hadn't disappeared, but now they were channeled into something more powerful, determination. I wasn't going to sit back and let her rewrite my life on her terms. Whatever she was hiding, I'd expose it. Back at the hotel, I began putting my own plan into motion. If Jessica wanted me gone, I'd give her a reason to think she'd succeeded, at least temporarily. Using an alias, I set up a new email account and sent her a short, cryptic message from it, "You'll regret this." Almost immediately, I saw her response come through, marked by a mix of fear and defensiveness. "Who is this? What do you want?" I didn't reply. Let her wonder. Let her feel even a fraction of the anxiety she'd caused me. Over the next few days, I kept up the ruse, sending her periodic messages from the anonymous account. Each one was brief, calculated, designed to unnerve her. "I know everything. You can't escape this. It's not over." Each message was met with a flurry of panicked replies from her, but I stayed silent, feeding her unease, knowing that paranoia would be my greatest ally. Meanwhile, Michael worked quietly in the background, sending me periodic updates. Chris, it turned out, wasn't just some casual fling. He had a checkered history, including a string of suspicious business dealings and connections to people who specialized in removing inconvenient problems. Jessica had chosen someone who could offer her more than companionship. He was someone with the means to make people vanish. One evening, Michael called, his tone serious. "Daniel, I found something that might change the game. Jessica and Chris are meeting tomorrow night at a cabin about an hour out of town. It's remote, but I can get you there without being noticed. Do you want to confront her?" The opportunity was too good to pass up. "Yes," I replied, my voice steady. "But I want to be smart about this. I want to know what they're planning before I make a move." The following night, Michael and I drove to the secluded cabin, parking a distance away so we wouldn't be seen. Under the cover of darkness, we made our way to the cabin's back window, crouching low as we listened to their conversation through a small device Michael had rigged up. Their voices were muffled, but clear enough to make out snippets of what they were saying. "I don't care how he found out," Jessica's voice cut through, cold and unfeeling. "We have to finish what we started. I can't have him hanging around like this. He knows too much." A wave of anger surged through me, but I forced myself to stay quiet. I had to hear it all, to understand the full extent of what they were planning. Chris's response was calm, almost bored. "Relax. We'll take care of it. He won't be around much longer. I'll make sure it's clean, no loose ends." They were planning something final, something that would ensure I'd never stand in their way again. As they continued talking, it became clear that this wasn't just about the affair, it was about removing me from her life permanently. Jessica had no remorse, no guilt, only a calculated determination to see her plan through. But she didn't know that I was already 10 steps ahead. The realization was both chilling and empowering. She thought she could control the outcome, thought she could dictate my fate. But as I listened to her and Chris sealing their own downfall, a sense of calm clarity washed over me. I wasn't just a pawn in her game, I was about to become the player she'd never expected. After gathering enough evidence, Michael and I slipped away, leaving Jessica and Chris to their plotting. We returned to town, formulating the final steps of my plan. I'd expose their intentions, make sure the world saw them for who they truly were. This wasn't just about revenge, it was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my future. Jessica thought she'd orchestrated the perfect ending. But little did she know, her story was about to take a turn she could never have foreseen. As the sun rose the next morning, I felt a clarity I hadn't experienced in months. Jessica thought she'd spun the perfect web, that her lies would hold up. But last night, listening to her and Chris outline their plan to deal with me, something in me shifted. The fear was gone, replaced by a calm, unshakable resolve. I was done reacting. Now, it was my turn to take control. Michael and I regrouped at his office, a small, cluttered space that smelled faintly of coffee and old books. He was typing away at his laptop, scanning through emails and records. "I've got the recordings from last night cleaned up," he said, his face lit by the glow of the screen. "Everything they said, crystal clear. We have enough to press charges. A conspiracy to commit harm, if not worse." I nodded, letting that sink in. But I knew a legal route alone wouldn't satisfy the betrayal I felt. Jessica had spent months, maybe years, manipulating my life, twisting my trust into something disposable. A simple arrest didn't feel like enough. I needed her to feel every ounce of what she'd inflicted on me. I wanted her perfect world to fall apart, one piece at a time, just like she'd done to mine. "Michael," I said, a plan taking shape in my mind, "I want to do more than expose them. I want to ruin every aspect of their lies, publicly." He raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. "You're thinking bigger?" "Exactly," I replied. "I want to dismantle every single piece of their lives. I want her friends, her family, even her colleagues to see her for who she really is. And Chris? I want him to understand what it feels like to lose control." Michael grinned, an expression of both admiration and caution. "I like where you're headed. But we'll need to be careful. We're dealing with people who have no qualms about using others for their own gain. We spent the rest of the day mapping out our moves. The first step was to gather allies, people who would be appalled by Jessica's betrayal and willing to help reveal her true colors. I reached out to several mutual friends, carefully crafting my message, dropping hints that there was more to the story than they'd ever imagined. I shared a few details, just enough to plant doubt in their minds, and let them stew on it. The ripple effect was immediate. People started calling, texting, wanting to know what was going on. Each conversation was an opportunity to subtly reveal another piece of Jessica's deception, to let her own network unravel her secrets. By the end of the day, whispers were spreading, and Jessica's carefully curated reputation was starting to show cracks. Next, I turned my attention to Chris. He was a man who thrived on secrecy, a shadow in Jessica's life that few people even knew existed. Michael, with his expertise, dug up every bit of dirt he could find. Financial records, hidden investments, previous scams. Chris wasn't just shady, he was dangerous, connected to multiple schemes and people who, if alerted, wouldn't be pleased with his betrayal. Michael grinned as he read through Chris's files. This guy has enemies. And they're not the forgiving kind. We crafted an anonymous tip, one that would make its way into the inboxes of people Chris wouldn't want knowing his whereabouts. With his connections and record, it wouldn't be long before his world started crumbling from every angle. That evening, I went back to our home. Jessica was out, probably meeting with Chris to discuss their plans for me. I stood in our living room, looking at the remnants of a life I'd thought was real, and felt nothing but determination. I was surrounded by memories that felt fake, reminders of promises that had meant nothing to her. And yet, the place no longer felt like mine. It felt like a crime scene, a monument to lies and deceit. I took one last look, then left a single note on the dining table for Jessica to find. I know everything. Check your email. When I left, I sent her an email with a link to a private video I'd set up, a compilation of the recordings from last night's conversation with Chris, clear as day, laying out every cruel plan they discussed to remove me from her life. Almost immediately, I saw her response, a panicked stream of calls, voicemails, and texts. Each one more frantic than the last. Daniel, please, let's talk. It's not what it sounds like, I swear. You don't understand. But I didn't respond. Instead, I released the video to a handful of friends, close family members who would see her messages as clear evidence of her true self. I didn't need to say anything. The video spoke louder than any explanation ever could. The fallout was immediate. Within hours, I watched as Jessica's social media began to explode with questions, accusations, even quiet condolences from people who'd once admired her. The perfect life she'd crafted was unraveling in real time, piece by piece. But it wasn't over. There was one final step. I wanted her and Chris to understand that their plans, no matter how calculated, had ultimately backfired. So, with Michael's help, we filed the recordings and evidence with the authorities. Conspiracy to cause harm, intent to defraud, every charge we could think of. A few days later, Jessica and Chris were picked up for questioning. I watched from a distance as the news reached her colleagues, as people began to question every aspect of her life, wondering what else she'd been hiding. For the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of peace. Not because I'd hurt her, but because I'd reclaimed my life. Jessica and Chris thought they'd won, that they'd erased me. But in the end, I was the one who'd taken control. The day after Jessica and Chris were brought in for questioning, I sat in the quiet of my hotel room, watching as news of their arrest slowly spread. The initial flurry of calls and messages had died down, but now, people were beginning to piece together what had happened. Friends, family, colleagues, all of them reached out, each conversation a chance for me to add one more truth, one more detail that exposed Jessica for who she truly was. I should have felt triumphant. In a way, I did. Seeing her world unravel, the one she had so carefully crafted, was a kind of justice I hadn't thought possible. But as the dust settled, I realized I didn't feel the overwhelming sense of satisfaction I had anticipated. Instead, I felt empty. Jessica and Chris were facing charges, her reputation was in shambles, and her life was crumbling in every way she had once tried to shape it. But the life I'd built, the life I thought was real, was gone too. There was no victory in that, no real celebration. Just an eerie silence, a quiet reminder of how fragile trust could be. I stared out the hotel window, the city lights casting a soft glow over the room. I had taken back control, yes, but now, there was no direction. No future with her, no answers that would heal the wounds she'd left. There was only the task of rebuilding. My phone buzzed, and for a moment, I considered ignoring it. But something told me to check. It was a message from Michael. "Daniel, you need to see this." Curious, I opened the attachment he'd sent. It was a video, grainy but clear enough to recognize. Michael had sent me security footage from outside the police station where Jessica and Chris were being held. I watched, fascinated, as Chris emerged, his face hard and defiant as he walked away, free. Jessica, however, was still inside, detained. Michael's text explained, Chris flipped on her. He made a deal, threw her under the bus in exchange for immunity. He's out, but she's facing full charges alone. I felt a strange, detached sense of irony. After all her plans to erase me, to replace me with someone she considered more exciting, she'd been discarded by that very person. Chris had used her, just as she'd used me, and now she was alone, facing the consequences. Part of me wanted to feel sorry for her. But then I remembered everything she'd done, every cold smile, every calculated move. This was her own doing. She'd created this fate, piece by piece. The next day, as I went about packing up my things, I received another unexpected call. It was from Jessica's sister, Emily, who had always been a good friend. "Daniel, I don't even know where to start," she said, her voice shaking. "Jessica told me everything when I went to see her. She's falling apart, Daniel. I know she did terrible things, but she's my sister, and she asked if you'd come to see her. She says she has something important to tell you." I was taken aback. After everything, Jessica wanted to see me? I couldn't imagine what she could possibly have to say. But Emily's words lingered in my mind, her voice filled with the same bewilderment I felt. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to move forward without another word between us. But another part of me was curious. What could she possibly say? Against my better judgment, I agreed to go. The police station was cold and sterile, the walls painted a shade of gray that felt almost symbolic. I was led into a small, dimly lit room, the kind meant for quick, uncomfortable conversations. Moments later, Jessica was brought in. She looked different, tired, her eyes hollow, as though the weight of her actions had finally settled on her. She sat across from me, and for a few moments, neither of us spoke. She seemed to struggle to find the words, and I found myself surprised by the vulnerability in her gaze. This wasn't the cold, calculating woman who had left me in the darkness. This was someone else, someone I barely recognized. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely more than a whisper. "Daniel. I know there's nothing I can say to make this right. I know I destroyed everything we had." I remained silent, watching her carefully, waiting for her to continue. "I don't expect forgiveness," she continued, her hands trembling slightly. "But I need you to know that I never thought it would end like this. I thought I could have it all, the thrill, the stability, the life we'd built." She paused, swallowing hard. "But in the end, I lost everything. And the worst part? Chris, he was never who I thought he was." It was a strange confession, almost surreal. But it wasn't enough. Why, Jessica? I asked, my voice steady. Why go through all this? Why try to erase me, instead of just ending it? She closed her eyes, a tear slipping down her cheek. Because I was afraid, Daniel. Afraid of losing what I had with you, afraid of what would happen if I just let you go. Chris convinced me that you'd never let me leave, that you'd become a problem. Her voice cracked. I was so blind, so selfish. And now I have nothing. She looked at me then, truly looked at me, and for the first time, I saw regret. Real, undeniable regret. It wasn't an apology I could accept, and it wasn't closure that made up for the damage she'd caused. But it was something, an acknowledgement of her own downfall. I stood up, letting her words linger. Jessica, I loved you. I trusted you. And you threw it all away for something you couldn't even hold on to. I turned to leave, knowing there was nothing left to say. Goodbye, Jessica. As I walked out, I felt a strange, liberating sense of peace. This was the closure I hadn't known I needed, the knowledge that she'd destroyed herself without me having to lift a finger. Her fate was sealed, and now, I was free. That evening, I took a walk through the city, the sounds and lights vibrant around me. I was no longer the man defined by betrayal or revenge. I was just me. Ready to rebuild, to move forward, leaving the past where it belonged. This wasn't an ending, it was the start of a new beginning. With Jessica's confession behind me, I thought I'd finally found peace. I spent the following weeks moving forward, building a life that was entirely mine. I reconnected with friends I'd lost touch with, threw myself into work, and felt, for the first time in months, like I was reclaiming control over my future. The past, though painful, had begun to fade. One evening, as I was settling in at a new apartment I'd rented in the heart of the city, my phone buzzed with a notification. It was from Michael, my investigator friend. We hadn't spoken since the day he helped me with the setup, and I figured it was just a check-in. But when I opened the message, my heart skipped a beat. It was a photo, one that sent a chill down my spine. The image showed a woman standing outside the police station, Jessica. She was walking out, free, her face covered by a pair of dark sunglasses, her expression unreadable. Underneath, Michael's message was brief, almost apologetic. She got a plea deal. Out on probation. I stared at the screen, the weight of the revelation sinking in. After everything she'd done, all the harm she'd caused, she was walking free. I felt a storm of emotions brewing within me, anger, frustration, disbelief. But beneath it all was a sense of foreboding, a feeling that something wasn't right. As I sat there processing the news, my phone buzzed again, this time with a call. The number was unlisted. Hesitantly, I answered. There was silence on the other end, followed by a familiar voice that sent chills down my spine. Daniel, Jessica's voice came through, soft but unmistakable. Surprised to hear from me? I clenched the phone, barely able to keep my voice steady. What do you want, Jessica? She laughed, a cold, mocking sound. You think you've won, don't you? You think you got your revenge, that you destroyed my life. She paused, letting the silence stretch out. But you haven't won, Daniel. You have no idea what's coming. A knot formed in my stomach. You're delusional, Jessica. I'm done with you. Whatever you think you're doing, it's over. Oh, Daniel, she replied, her tone dripping with contempt. You were always so naive. Always thinking you could control everything. But you don't know me at all. You think I'd just let this end? She laughed again, colder this time. This is only the beginning. I still have my connections, and I don't forget. Her words echoed in my mind, filling me with a dread I hadn't felt before. You're sick, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Am I? She replied, her tone shifting, suddenly calm, almost menacing. Be careful, Daniel. Because I have nothing left to lose. The line went dead. I sat there, the silence of the room pressing down on me, feeling the weight of her threat settle over me like a shroud. Jessica had slipped through the cracks of justice, untouched, and was now free, driven, unhinged, and fueled by a need for revenge that matched my own. And now, with nothing left to tether her to her old life, she was unpredictable, a danger lurking in the shadows of my own story. That night, I barely slept, every creak of the floor, every shadow outside my window making my pulse race. I knew Jessica, and I knew she wouldn't back down. She was a storm on the horizon, one I hadn't anticipated, one I couldn't ignore. As dawn broke, I looked out at the city, realizing with a sense of chilling certainty that this wasn't over. Jessica was out there, waiting, planning, just as I had once done. And now, the hunter had become the hunted. This wasn't an ending. It was the beginning of a game neither of us had expected to play, a dangerous, relentless pursuit where there would be only one survivor.
Get a life, she screamed, her wine glass raised high, as if she'd earned the right to humiliate me in front of everyone. Her name's Vanessa. My wife, or at least the woman I used to think was my wife, stood in the center of a backyard party she threw to celebrate her new job at a high-end fashion firm. Family, friends, coworkers, at least 30 people watched her put on the show. Her sister Rachel laughed. Her father snorted into his drink. Even her new boss, some creep named Dominic, cracked a smile. Everyone seemed to find it hilarious, except me. Stop hanging around Jake just to feel important, she added, her voice slicing through the music. He's rich and successful. You're not. Jake. My best friend since college. Millionaire tech guy. Vanessa had always flirted with him, but I thought it was harmless, until I noticed how often he stopped answering my calls. I didn't say anything right away. I just smiled. Because I knew something none of them did. Because I had signed her damn paycheck. She didn't know I was the silent partner behind that high-end fashion firm. Didn't know I invested through a holding company with Jake. Didn't know the job was created as a favor to me, and didn't know that every cent she was bragging about came from my own private bank account. Vanessa had spent years telling everyone I was a failure. I had left my finance job 2 years ago to work on something real, something with meaning, and for her, that meant I was nothing. Every night was the same, cold shoulder, back turned, her eyes locked on her phone. She thought she was better than me now. Independent. Free. But the truth was, she had no idea who the hell I really was anymore. And that night? That celebration? It was the night I decided I was done playing dumb. I watched her toast with Jake. She leaned in a little too close, whispered something in his ear, and I saw his eyes flick toward me before they both laughed. It hit me like a punch in the gut, but I held it in. I sipped my drink, clenched my jaw, and waited. The music blared on. People danced. Vanessa walked around like a peacock in heat, soaking up every compliment, every fake smile. I sat in the corner, quietly loading the final page of documents onto my phone, a gift from my lawyer, delivered just that morning. Then came the moment. Her paycheck, her first from the company, was handed to her in a sleek envelope, a little symbol of her new role. She waved it around like it was a damn Oscar. Until she opened it. Her face dropped, and the room went silent. I stood up. I figured I'd drop by to see how you liked your first check, I said, my voice low but steady. I heard it's a good company. Great benefits. I should know, I co-own it. Jake's eyes went wide. Rachel choked on her wine. Vanessa? She froze. Her lipstick-stained smile cracked like glass. She stared at the bottom of the check, where my signature, Ryan Carter, was printed in bold black ink. You signed this? She asked, her voice suddenly tiny. I nodded. Surprise. There was a pause. A long one. Long enough for everyone to realize what just happened. Then Vanessa did what she always does when the mask slips. She turned vicious. This is your way of trying to control me, isn't it? She hissed, stepping closer. You're pathetic, Ryan. You think throwing money around makes you important? No, I said. But maybe now you'll stop pretending I'm the one who's useless. She stared at me, jaw tight. I could see her working through 1,000 thoughts. Anger. Embarrassment. Rage. She wasn't used to being caught off guard. And then she slapped me. Hard. Gasps echoed around the yard. But I didn't flinch. I just smiled again, reached into my jacket, and pulled out a flash drive. I think Jake might want to see what's on here, I said calmly, tossing it to him. And don't worry, Vanessa, your part's intimate. I walked out to the sound of chaos, Jake shouting, Vanessa screeching, her father yelling something about making a scene. But I was done. I walked down the street that night with my blood boiling, but my spine straight. I had played the fool long enough. And tomorrow, I'd finally open the files my PI sent me. Because this slap, this public humiliation, wasn't even the beginning. It was the spark. And everything was about to burn. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence of a house that had turned into a stranger. Vanessa didn't come home. Good. I didn't want her to. I sat there replaying everything. Her smirk when she told me to get a life. The way she leaned into Jake like I wasn't even there. That slap, not just the pain of it, but the message. She wasn't sorry. She was pissed I beat her to the punch. She didn't care what it did to me in front of all those people. That was the real Vanessa. And I'd spent too long pretending she was someone else. The next morning, I made coffee like it was any other day, but there was no pretending anymore. I opened my laptop and finally clicked on the folder my private investigator had labeled Confidential, Vanessa. I'd paid extra for the good kind of PI. Quiet, thorough, unapologetic. There were photos, videos, screenshots of messages, dates, times, hotel names. She wasn't just cheating on me with Jake. She was cheating with Dominic, too, her boss. The one who'd toasted her new job while his hand rested too long on her lower back. Hell, there were even texts between her and some guy named Chase, a personal trainer at her gym. She was playing them all. The messages were disgusting, not just flirty, graphic, arrogant. There was one where she called me her charity case husband and joked about how he wouldn't even notice if I brought a man home, long as I smiled after. I felt like throwing up. I didn't even know when the tears started, somewhere between screenshot 30 and 40. Not because I missed her. Because I hated that I had let this rot fester under my roof. That I had given everything to someone who saw me as a tool. She used my money, my connections, my friends. And when she was done climbing, she laughed and spit on the one man who actually gave a damn. I left the house that afternoon with a single goal, not revenge. Not even justice. Just truth. I needed people to know who she really was. Not just her family or friends, but everyone. I drove straight to Jake's place. Parked. Sat there staring at the front door, knuckles white on the wheel. I didn't even know what I'd say. But then I saw her. Vanessa. Coming out of Jake's condo in the same dress she wore 2 nights ago, hair messy, sunglasses on. She didn't even look guilty. She looked like she was going for coffee after a spa day. She didn't see me. I let her leave. Then I walked up, rang the bell. Jake opened the door, looking like hell. Eyes red. Voice raw. She told me you were broke, he said before I could speak. Said you were depressed and dangerous. Said he trailed off. I handed him the flash drive again. Watch it, I said. Then call me. I didn't stay. Didn't want to hear the excuses, the apologies. Jake was a pawn. And me? I was done being the king who acted like a pawn. Back home, Vanessa was finally there. Sitting at the kitchen island like nothing happened. She looked up at me with the coldest face I've ever seen. Are you seriously going to keep playing the victim? She asked. You're not blameless, Ryan. You let this happen. I didn't answer. I opened the drawer, pulled out the thick envelope my lawyer had prepared, and slid it across the table. What's this? She asked. Divorce papers. She didn't blink. She laughed. You think you'll come out on top here, she said. I'll bleed you dry. I walked over to the counter, picked up her latest paycheck again, and dropped it in front of her. My name's on every check you'll ever cash from that job, I said. You don't work for them. You work for me. You try to take me down. I take the company with me. Try me. Her lips parted, just slightly. Not enough to speak. Just enough to finally let the fear in. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to hit. I had the one thing she never expected from me. Power. And I was just getting started. She didn't say a word. For the first time in years, she was quiet. I watched her stare at those papers like she was trying to figure out how the hell the ground vanished beneath her feet. Maybe it finally hit her that I wasn't the same man she thought she could control, humiliate, and walk over with her 6-inch heels. She got up slowly, her chair scraping across the tiles like nails on a coffin. You planned all of this, she said, her voice barely a whisper. No, I replied. You did. The moment you decided to lie to me. The moment you decided I was too stupid to notice you were screwing half the city while cashing my checks. She opened her mouth again, I think to argue, but I cut her off with a look. A sharp one. One that said I knew everything. One that said we're done playing nice. She went upstairs, heels clicking like a metronome counting down the seconds to her eviction. And I stood there, hand on the counter, breathing. It hit me in waves. 1 minute I felt like screaming. The next, I wanted to laugh. She had twisted me into thinking I wasn't enough for years. And yet she was the one sneaking around like a coward. I was faithful, loyal. I cooked dinner, rubbed her back when she faked her migraines, took her parents out for steak when they mocked me for not having a real job. God, I hated how much I tried. That night, I slept on the couch. Not because she kicked me there, because I couldn't stomach the thought of lying next to her, even one more night. Every inch of that bed smelled like her perfume, like the false image I'd held on to. I woke up the next morning to shouting. Outside. It was Jake. I opened the door and he was pacing on the front lawn, red in the face, holding the flash drive like it was radioactive. She told me she loved me, man, he shouted. Said she was leaving you. Said I was different. I just leaned against the frame, arms crossed. And yet she left your place to sleep in my house. She played me, he said, eyes wild. She used me. Joined the club, I muttered. I didn't know. I swear. I thought you were done. She said. She says a lot of things, I cut in. Lying is second nature to her. Breathing might be third. He stood there for a while, quiet now, hands shaking. Then he said something I didn't expect. She's pregnant. The world paused. What? She told me yesterday. Said it might be mine. I felt something inside me crack. Not snap, not yet. But crack. Like the foundation of everything I thought I'd buried was starting to quake again. You believe her? I asked. He looked down. I don't know. I don't know what's real anymore. I closed the door without saying a word. Upstairs, I heard the water running. Vanessa was in the shower, scrubbing herself like she could rinse off her betrayal. I walked up. Slow. Calm. Opened the door. She turned, startled, wrapped in a towel, her makeup streaked down from crying. If it's mine, I said, I'll raise the kid. But not with you. You're toxic. You don't get to ruin 2 lives just because you're broken. She blinked, processing. It might be Jake's, she said softly. I nodded. Then go live with Jake. He kicked me out. Shame. She stood there, dripping, staring at me like I was the villain in her movie. Who are you, Ryan? She asked. And I smiled. Someone you should have never underestimated. She followed me downstairs, barefoot and wet, still wrapped in that white towel like it was armor. But it didn't matter anymore. I'd seen everything. Her tricks didn't work on me now. Where am I supposed to go? She asked. Not my problem, I said, not looking back. You wanted independence. You bragged about not needing me. Go live that. She laughed, dry and bitter. So that's it? You're just gonna throw away everything? All these years. I turned slowly, met her eyes. You threw it away the moment you crawled into someone else's bed and lied to my face. Her lips trembled. She was trying to play victim now. That used to work. She'd cry, and I'd fold. But this time, I didn't even blink. She saw it, knew she'd lost control. That scared her more than anything. I was lonely, she whispered. You were always working on some stupid idea or helping Jake with his crap. I needed attention. I needed to feel seen. You needed to be the center of everything, I said. That's not love, Vanessa. That's ego. She sat down on the couch, staring at nothing. I left her there. The next 2 days were a blur. I called my lawyer, initiated the divorce officially. Clean cut. No negotiation. I had everything documented, the affairs, the PI reports, even her trash talking me in front of witnesses. I wasn't going to drag it through the mud unless she tried to fight dirty. She didn't leave the house. Barely moved. Every time I walked in the room, she looked up like she had something to say, then swallowed it. I didn't care. Her words didn't mean anything anymore. They were just air-shaped into lies. On the 3rd morning, she was gone. No note. No message. Nothing. Just her closet half empty, her perfumes gone, the drawers yanked open like a storm blew through. I didn't chase her. I sat in the silence for hours, just breathing, letting it sink in. And then something snapped, but in a good way. I got up. I took down the wedding photos, boxed up the anniversary gifts, the fake sentimental junk she loved to wave around for Instagram. I deleted the playlist she made me, the one filled with songs she'd sent to other men too, as I later found out. And I opened my laptop again. I hadn't touched my own project in months. A startup that was supposed to help small business owners automate their books, something I'd put my soul into before Vanessa drained it out of me. I started coding again. and it felt like breathing after almost drowning. That same afternoon, Jake called. I talked to her, he said, voice flat. She said she's keeping the baby. Doesn't want a paternity test. That tracks. She's living with Dominic now. I laughed. I couldn't help it. Of course she is. She'll keep climbing the ladder until it breaks. She's dangerous, man, Jake said quietly. She messed with my head. I'm still trying to figure out how. She made us both feel small so she could feel big, I said. Classic manipulator move. I'm sorry. Yeah, I said. Me too. We didn't say much after that. What could we say? We were two guys who got played by the same woman and somehow still came out of it with more clarity than we ever had. That night, I sat out back on the porch with a drink in my hand, watching the wind move through the trees. The quiet felt different now. Less like loss, more like freedom. I could finally hear myself think again. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a failure. I felt like a man who survived a storm. Weeks passed. And just like that, she became a ghost in my house's history, a presence that once infected every inch of my life, now reduced to a name on divorce documents and a pile of memories I no longer respected. The papers were signed. The judge stamped them without hesitation. Irreconcilable differences. Understatement of the year. I didn't tell my parents the details. Just that we were done. My mother hugged me and whispered, I never trusted her. My father gave me a look that said he was proud I didn't let her drag me down. It's strange how quickly people stop pretending once the mask falls off. But the world kept turning. I threw myself into work. My project, the software I'd abandoned while Vanessa turned my focus into an insult, it started growing. Word got around. Jake, after everything, still believed in it. Maybe that was his way of apologizing, or maybe he wanted something to rebuild after being chewed up and spit out by the same woman. Either way, he invested. Quietly. No strings attached. And I was back. Every day got a little easier. The house felt bigger, cleaner. Like it could breathe again. Like I could breathe again. Then came the message. It was a Sunday. Simple. From her. You know it's yours. No context. No explanation. Just venom disguised as sentiment. I stared at it for a long time. My thumb hovered over the reply button, but I didn't press it. Because I finally understood. Vanessa only reached out when she was losing control. She wasn't reaching for me. She was reaching for power. And I wasn't handing it over again. 2 days later, she showed up at my office. Unannounced. Dressed sharp, makeup flawless, wearing that innocent act like a second skin. I hadn't seen her since she walked out, and for a second, the smell of her perfume triggered some memory deep in my gut. But then I blinked, and I saw her for what she really was. A storm in high heels. She smiled. You look good. I didn't return it. You look desperate. Her face twitched, just slightly. I wanted to talk. About what? The way you lied to everyone? Slept around? Called me a failure while cashing my checks? She crossed her arms, eyes narrowing. I was angry. I felt invisible. You were seen, I said. You just hated what you saw in the mirror. She stepped closer. We were married, Ryan. We shared something. You can't pretend that meant nothing. It didn't mean what I thought it did. My voice was ice. You took everything sacred and used it as a game. We left. She looked like she might cry. I didn't care. She tried one more trick. If it's your child. I cut her off. Then you'll get support. Not love. Not a second chance. Not a single ounce of who I used to be. Silence. Then she snapped. You think you're above me now? Just because you've got your name on a company and a few zeros in your account. No, I said, leaning in. I'm above you because I woke up. You turned your back on a man who would have walked through fire for you. And now you're just another lesson I'll never forget. I walked past her. Called security. Didn't wait to watch her escorted out. And that was that. The door closed behind her. And this time, it stayed closed. The air after she left felt different. Lighter. Like her lies had weight. And with her gone, the room could finally float. I stood there, just breathing, staring at the door she slammed moments ago. And I didn't feel broken. I felt clean. That night, I drove out to the lake. The one where we used to go back in the early days, before the money, before the power plays, before she started treating me like an accessory to her Instagram life. It was cold. Wind off the water cut through my coat, but I didn't care. I just sat on the hood of my car and let the silence wrap around me. That's when Jake called again. She's telling people you're refusing to take a paternity test, he said. Trying to make it look like you're dodging your responsibility. I sighed. Of course she is. She also said you hit her, he added, Quieter this time. My blood went cold. I never. I know, Jake interrupted. I know, man. That's why I called. I didn't believe it. But she's spiraling. That's what abusers do when they lose power. They rewrite history. Try to burn everything behind them so no one can trace the truth. I filed a defamation claim the next morning. Quick. Surgical. No drama. I attached the audio from our last conversation. She hadn't noticed my phone recording from my pocket. Just in case. She tried to fight it. Filed her own claims. But the truth, once you drag it into the light, doesn't flinch the way lies do. The court sided with me. In whatever social circle she had left, they went silent. A month later, she vanished from social media entirely. I didn't celebrate. I just moved on. The business took off. The software went live. Clients came fast, mostly small business owners like me, people who had been taken advantage of or overlooked. I knew how they felt. I'd lived it. There was something powerful about building again, about not doing it to prove her wrong, but to prove myself right. Then, out of nowhere, I got an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside, a sonogram photo. Scribbled in the corner in her handwriting. Still yours. Thought you should know. I stared at it for a long time. And I felt nothing. Not hate. Not pain. Just this deep, quiet understanding that the woman who sent it wasn't capable of love, not the kind that nurtures, protects, sacrifices. She only knew how to use love as leverage. I handed it to my lawyer. Told him to handle it. DNA test. Financial support if it's mine. But nothing more. I wasn't going to be dragged back into her web. If there was a child involved, I'd step up, but only for the child. Not for her. Never again for her. And that's where I am now. Stronger. Alone. But not lonely. Some scars don't fade. Some betrayals stain deeper than blood. But eventually, you learn how to live with them, not because they stop hurting, but because they stop controlling you. If I could give advice to any man reading this, it would be this. Watch for the little things. The jokes that cut too deep. The praise that always feels conditional. The affection that disappears the moment you stop performing. Real love doesn't belittle you to feel bigger. And if she laughs at your ambition, mocks your struggle, or treats loyalty like weakness, walk. Because once she sees your worth, she'll either respect it or fear it. Either way, don't wait until she sees your signature on her paycheck to remember your name. Months passed, and peace became my new addiction. No chaos, no gaslighting, no emotional hangovers from pointless arguments that always ended with her twisting my words. My mornings became simple, black coffee, a quiet sunrise, and the sound of a mind that wasn't at war with itself anymore. People started noticing. Old friends reached out. Guys I hadn't seen since college. Even my brother, who used to avoid me because he couldn't stand the tension in my house, started stopping by again. They said I looked different. Taller somehow. Lighter. That's what healing does. It straightens your spine and clears your eyes. You stop walking like you're apologizing for existing. One evening, while walking out of a business conference, I saw Rachel, Vanessa's sister, waiting outside the hotel. She looked nervous. Kept checking over her shoulder like she was hiding from someone. She spotted me and walked over, pulling her coat tight around her. I shouldn't be here, she said, but I needed to talk to you. I didn't say anything. She's not well, Rachel continued. She's living with some older guy now. Not Dominic, someone new. And she keeps spiraling. Drinking too much. Saying things like she'll make everything right again. She really believes you'll take her back. I shook my head slowly. I'm not her rehab, I said. I know, Rachel replied. I soft. I just thought you deserved to know. She still blames you for everything. Of course she did. She was the kind of person who could stab you in the chest and then cry about how your blood ruined her outfit. Before Rachel left, she hesitated, then pulled something from her purse. She asked me to give you this. It was a necklace. One I'd given Vanessa years ago when we were still pretending everything was fine. A simple gold chain with a small sapphire. She used to wear it all the time. Said it made her feel protected. I held it for a moment, then dropped it into the nearest trash can without a word. Rachel watched me do it, and she smiled. I wish she'd married someone like you, she whispered. No, I said. She would have destroyed anyone like me. A few weeks later, I got the results. The baby was mine. I won't lie, my stomach dropped when I saw the letter. I sat in my car outside the office, gripping the steering wheel, thinking of all the things I'd never wanted to raise a child in. Lies, manipulation, bitterness. But this wasn't about her. This was about the innocent life she'd brought into the world. I filed for custody. Not out of spite. Out of duty. I knew what kind of mother she'd be. Unstable. Self-serving. Reckless. The same way she treated everyone, even her own family. It got ugly. She screamed in court. Called me a thief, a liar, a manipulator. Said I brainwashed Jake. That I used her. That I never supported her dreams. The judge wasn't impressed. Her tantrums backfired. I got primary custody. She got supervised visits twice a month. The day it was finalized, I sat in my lawyer's office staring out the window, watching people rush down the street, their lives moving so fast while mine had slowed to something deliberate and true. And for the first time in my life, I felt free. Not just from her. From the version of myself that let it all happen. That guy? The one who made excuses for her, who smiled through insults and believed her crocodile tears. He was gone. And in his place stood a man who finally understood his own worth, not because he had money or leverage or revenge, but because he survived loving the wrong person without letting it destroy his capacity to love the right one someday. I walked out of that office, head high, heart clear. Let her tell the world I was a failure. I'd let my child grow up and find out the truth for themselves. One day, when they ask me about her, and they will, I'll tell them the truth, gently but clearly, that love isn't supposed to hurt. And that strength isn't in holding on to someone broken just because you're afraid to be alone. It's in walking away and never looking back. The last time I saw her was at the courthouse parking lot. She stood by her car, arms crossed, sunglasses hiding whatever was left of her soul. She wasn't glowing, wasn't powerful. No audience, no spotlight, no men orbiting her like she was the sun. Just a woman who had burned every bridge she danced across. I had her child in the back seat, strapped and safe, sleeping soundly, unaware of the fire that once scorched this family into ashes. She walked up slowly, heels clicking on pavement like a weak echo of the arrogance she used to carry. I don't even know who you are anymore, she said. And I smiled, not with smugness, not with vengeance, but with peace. That's because you never bothered to find out. She flinched. You were too busy tearing me down to see I was the one holding everything up. She glanced at the car window. Do you think he'll hate me one day? I looked her dead in the eye. I think he'll know the truth. Silence hung in the air like fog. And for once, she didn't have a comeback. No insult. No manipulation. Just her standing there, face cracking in slow motion as she realized she had no more plays left. I got in the car, started the engine, and drove away. No dramatic last words. No glances in the rearview mirror. Just the road ahead. Clean. Clear. Mine. These days, I live quietly. My son is growing. Laughs like the world owes him joy. He doesn't carry the weight of her sins, not if I can help it. He's the light I never knew I needed. And every time I look at him, I remember what real love feels like. Honest. Uncomplicated. Unconditional. The house is different now. Warmer. Full of music, books, silence that doesn't scream. I've built something new, not just a business, but a life. One with real people, real connection, and no masks at the table. I don't date much. Not because I'm afraid, but because I know what I'm worth now. I won't ever hand that over cheaply again. And when I do let someone in, it'll be someone who builds beside me, not burns behind my back. Sometimes I still hear her voice in my head. You're nothing without me. But I just laugh now. Because the truth? I was everything without her. She just never had the eyes to see it. And if you're a man reading this, stuck in something toxic, something that strips you down, eats at your spirit, makes you question your worth, let me be the one to tell you. You're not broken. You're just waking up. Get up. Walk out. And never apologize for choosing peace over poison. Because real strength isn't staying with someone who makes love feel like war. It's surviving the battle. And never letting them draft you again. I had just come back from the gym, the door still swinging behind me, when I heard Jennifer's voice from the living room. But it wasn't the usual, hey babe, or how was your day? No, this time it was different. There on the couch, she was sitting with her phone in her hand, scrolling through messages. What caught my eye wasn't the phone, it was the name on the screen. Ethan. I froze for a second. Ethan. That was the name of the guy from her yoga class, the one she always laughed off as just a friend. But there was something off in her behavior today. Something wasn't right. As I stood there, trying to catch my breath, she quickly pressed the phone down onto the couch cushion as if she had just realized I was standing there. She tried to play it off, flashing me that smile I'd seen 1,000 times before. But this time, it didn't comfort me. It sent a cold shiver down my spine. Hey, you okay? she asked, her voice sweet but with an edge of panic in it. I didn't answer her right away. Instead, I slowly walked over to where she was sitting. My hands were clammy, my mind racing, but I needed answers. What was going on? Why was she acting like this? And why was Ethan texting her? It didn't take long before I saw her hesitate. Who's Ethan? I asked, keeping my tone even but stern. Her face froze. For just a split second, I saw her glance at her phone, then back at me. Her smile faded. The mask was slipping. "Oh, just some guy from the gym," she said quickly, brushing it off as if it didn't matter. "You know how it is." But I didn't buy it. Something in her voice didn't match her words. Her usual ease was gone. This wasn't some innocent friendship. The way she had tensed up when I asked about Ethan told me everything I needed to know. The pieces were falling into place. I had to find out more. But I also knew I was standing on the edge of something that would change everything. I couldn't let it go. The words echoed in my mind. Just some guy from the gym. That was her excuse. But it didn't add up. Jennifer was never the type to get close to someone without me knowing about it. She would have told me about Ethan, wouldn't she? I thought back to every moment, every little detail that seemed so innocent at the time. The late nights at the office, the constant texting during dinner, the girls' weekends she seemed to take more and more often. All those little things that I had brushed off as her being busy or caught up with life. But now, as I sat across from her, everything felt different. I could no longer pretend that everything was fine. The trust one had placed in her, the life we had built together, was hanging by a thread. I couldn't just let it slide anymore. "So, you're telling me Ethan's just a friend?" I repeated, my voice more steady than I felt. Jennifer looked at me, eyes wide, as if she hadn't expected me to press her. "Yes, that's all," she said, but her smile was forced, the edges of her lips twitching nervously. I wasn't convinced. I had to know the truth, but I couldn't ask her directly again. She was too good at lying, too practiced at twisting things around. I needed evidence. I needed something concrete that would make her face the reality of what was happening. I spent the next few hours thinking, watching, trying to gather the courage to confront her again. She was acting as if nothing had happened. It was maddening. The normalcy of her behavior made everything worse. How could she be so calm? How could she lie to me with such ease? The next morning, I woke up early, unable to sleep. The house was quiet, and Jennifer was still asleep next to me. I watched her, her hair spread out on the pillow, her face peaceful, as if the world hadn't just shifted beneath our feet. She was pretending everything was fine, but I couldn't ignore the feeling in the pit of my stomach. This wasn't right. This wasn't how our marriage was supposed to be. I quietly got out of bed, trying not to wake her, and went into the living room. I needed to think. I needed a plan. I couldn't just sit back and wait for things to unravel without taking action. That's when I remembered the phone. Her phone was still charging on the kitchen counter. I knew I shouldn't do it. I knew it was wrong to invade her privacy like that. But my hands shook as I picked it up. I didn't care anymore. I had to know. I unlocked it, and my heart raced as I scrolled through her messages. Most of them were normal, harmless. But then I found it. A string of texts between Jennifer and Ethan. The messages weren't innocent. They were full of flirtation, jokes, and even plans to meet up. One message stood out. "I'll be waiting for you tonight. Don't let him know. I need you." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I felt the air leave my lungs. She had been seeing him, hiding it from me, lying to my face. All those times I trusted her, all those late nights when I thought she was working late or out with friends, had been spent with him. I felt sick. I had never been this betrayed in my life. But it wasn't just the messages that crushed me. It was the realization that I had been blind. I had allowed myself to trust her, to believe in us, when she had been deceiving me the entire time. I couldn't think straight. Anger and hurt surged through me, mixing together in a way I couldn't describe. I wanted to confront her right then and there, to scream at her, to demand answers. But something inside me told me to wait. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me crumble in front of her. I wasn't going to let her see how much it hurt. Instead, I decided to play it cool. I'd wait until the right moment. Jennifer woke up a few hours later, and as she entered the kitchen, I acted like nothing was wrong. I greeted her with a smile, as if nothing had changed. But inside, everything had changed. My heart was heavy with the truth, and I could barely look at her without feeling the urge to lash out. She was making coffee, humming to herself like she always did. She didn't seem to have a care in the world. How could she be so calm? Didn't she know that everything was falling apart? "Morning," she said, her voice still warm. "Morning," I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral. We ate breakfast in silence, the weight of the unspoken words hanging between us. I could feel the distance growing with each passing second. But I didn't say anything. Not yet. I needed more time. I needed to make sure I had all the facts before I confronted her. I was going to catch her in the act, in a way she couldn't deny. Then, and only then, would I confront her. I would make her face the truth. But little did I know, things were about to spiral out of control. I spent the next few days in a haze, running on fumes, as the weight of Jennifer's betrayal hung over me like a storm cloud. Every word she spoke felt like a lie, every glance too calculated. I couldn't help but wonder how many more lies had been woven into the fabric of our relationship. The hardest part wasn't the betrayal itself, it was the deceit. She had made me believe she was my partner, my best friend, but now I realized she had been hiding another life from me. I had to know the truth, and I was determined to confront her once and for all. The opportunity came one evening after a long, exhausting day. Jennifer had told me she was going to meet some friend for dinner. She didn't mention any specific names, but she'd said it was just a casual night out. I wasn't in the mood for a social evening, so I decided to stay home. As the clock ticked closer to 7 p.m., I could feel my anxiety building. I knew tonight was the night. I had to face her. I couldn't let her keep lying to me. When she left, I knew where she was going. I had already checked her phone. Ethan was texting her again. "I'll see you tonight. Same place." My pulse quickened as I grabbed my jacket and headed out the door. I wasn't sure how I was going to approach the situation, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to let her think she could get away with this. No more pretending. The drive to the restaurant was quick, but it felt like a lifetime. My mind raced with a million thoughts, each one darker than the last. How was I going to confront her? What would she say? Would she try to deny it? I had all the evidence I needed, but something inside me told me to be careful. I couldn't let my anger take control. I had to stay calm, composed. I parked across the street from the restaurant, watching the entrance through the rearview mirror. The place was busy, filled with couples and groups of friends. Jennifer had always liked it here, cozy, intimate, the perfect place to have a quiet meal. But tonight it felt like a trap. I waited and waited. My nerves were getting the best of me. Then, at 7:45, she arrived. And she wasn't alone. The man walking beside her was Ethan. I could feel my blood boiling as I watched them. They were laughing together, their body language too familiar. She was leaning into him, her hand resting on his arm. It hit me like a ton of bricks. This wasn't just a fling. This wasn't some innocent friendship. This was something far deeper. Something they had been hiding from me. I couldn't sit in the car any longer. I had to confront them. But how? How could I face them both without losing my mind? I took a deep breath and opened the car door. My legs felt like lead as I walked across the street. Each step felt heavier than the last. As I got closer to the entrance, I could hear their laughter. I couldn't take it anymore. I pushed the door open, walking straight toward them. "Jennifer," I said, my voice firm but controlled. She turned around in shock, her face pale as she saw me standing there. Ethan froze beside her, looking from Jennifer to me, unsure of what to do. For a brief moment, there was a silence, a heavy, suffocating silence. "Ethan, what the hell is going on here?" I demanded, my eyes locked on Jennifer's. She took a step back, her eyes darting between me and Ethan. I could see the panic rising in her chest. "What do you mean?" she stammered, her voice too high-pitched, too defensive. "Don't let her lie," I told myself. This was the moment. The truth had to come out. "I know what's been going on, Jennifer," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I know about you and Ethan. I've seen the messages. I've seen everything." Her face went from shock to anger in an instant. "You've been snooping through my things?" she hissed. I wasn't going to let her turn this around on me. "I didn't snoop. You left everything out in the open for me to find." I shot back. "I trusted you. I believed in you. And you've been lying to me this whole time." Ethan stepped forward, his hand raised as if trying to diffuse the situation. Look, man, this isn't. But I cut him off. Shut up. My voice was louder than I intended, but I didn't care. You don't get to stand there like you're the innocent one in all of this. You've been sleeping with my wife behind my back. And now you have the audacity to act like you didn't do anything wrong. Jennifer's face twisted with anger, but there was also something else, fear. Fear of being exposed. You have no idea what you're talking about, she spat, her voice low and venomous. You don't know anything. You've been so busy pretending everything was perfect that you didn't even notice me slipping away. The words hit me like a punch in the gut. She was so casual, so indifferent, as if what she had done didn't matter. But I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. You're right. I didn't notice, I said quietly, stepping closer. I didn't see it, but I see it now, and I'm done being your fool. I turned to Ethan. I don't know what you think you're doing with my wife, but you've made a huge mistake. Ethan opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, I shoved him hard in the chest. He stumbled backward, his hands instinctively reaching for the table to steady himself. Jennifer gasped. What the hell is wrong with you? She yelled. I'm done with both of you, I said, my voice barely a whisper, but with a finality that left no room for negotiation. I turned on my heel and walked out of the restaurant, leaving Jennifer and Ethan standing there. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. As I drove away, I felt a strange calm wash over me. I had confronted her. I had made my stand. But what came next? The drive home was a blur. My mind was reeling with 1,000 emotions, none of which seemed to make sense. I had done it. I had confronted her, finally forced the truth out into the open. But why didn't it feel like a victory? Why was there such a gnawing emptiness in my chest? Wasn't I supposed to feel empowered by my decision to take control? Instead, I just felt numb. As I parked the car in the driveway, the weight of the moment started to sink in. I wasn't sure what to expect when I got home. Would she be waiting for me? Would she try to apologize? Or was she going to act like nothing had happened? Would Ethan come knocking at my door, too, trying to smooth things over? I wasn't sure what I wanted more, answers or closure. What was the next step in all of this? I stepped into the house, and the silence hit me like a cold wind. The place felt empty. For the first time in a long time, our home didn't feel like a sanctuary. It felt like a battleground, a place where everything had been torn apart. I made my way to the living room and sat down, staring at the floor, my hands trembling slightly. This wasn't the life I had imagined for myself. This wasn't how I thought things would end. I had loved Jennifer. I had trusted her more than anyone else. But now, I wasn't sure if I knew her at all. The sound of the front door opening snapped me out of my thoughts. I turned, half expecting to see her standing there, looking contrite, ready to beg for forgiveness. But it wasn't Jennifer who walked in. It was Ethan. For a moment, I just stared at him, unsure how to react. Why was he here? What the hell did he want now? His presence only added to the sickening feeling in the pit of my stomach. Wasn't he supposed to be the one hiding in the shadows, not barging in like some entitled fool? What do you want? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, though the fury inside me was building with every passing second. Ethan took a step forward, his hands raised in a peace gesture. Look, man, I didn't come here to fight. Oh, really? I sneered. Then what the hell do you want? You've already taken enough from me. You've destroyed my marriage, and now you're coming here to act like you've got the moral high ground. He shifted uncomfortably, clearly caught off guard by my response. No, that's not what I meant. I didn't want to hurt you. It's just, things happened. Jennifer, she wanted it too. I clenched my fists. Don't you dare try to make it sound like you're some innocent bystander in all of this. You knew what you were doing. You knew what you were taking from me. But you didn't care, did you? Ethan's face shifted from confusion to something closer to guilt. But I didn't want his apology. I didn't need it. I was beyond needing anything from him. I don't care about your excuses, I said through gritted teeth. I don't care if she was the one who pursued you. You could have said no. You could have walked away. But you didn't. So, don't stand there pretending like you didn't know what was going on. Ethan stayed silent, his eyes cast downward. I could see the shame in his posture, but it wasn't enough to make me feel better. The damage had already been done, and no amount of guilt from him would change the fact that my life had been upended. Get out, I said coldly. I don't want to hear anything else from you. Get out of my house and don't come back. He hesitated, but after a moment, he nodded and turned to leave. As the door clicked shut behind him, I slumped back into the couch, my mind spinning in a dozen different directions. I had been right. I had confronted her. I had made him leave. But what now? What came next? What was the point of all of this? Jennifer was still out there somewhere, probably just as confused as I was, or maybe not. Maybe she had already moved on. Maybe this was just another chapter in her life that she would eventually close without a second thought. Maybe, just maybe, she never cared as much as I did. I heard the front door open again, and this time, it was her. Jennifer walked in, her face still flushed from the night out, but there was something different in her eyes. She wasn't crying. She wasn't angry. She was just cold. "You're back," I said, my voice flat, my heart heavy with the weight of what was to come. "Yeah," she replied, not looking at me, not acknowledging the elephant in the room. I wanted to scream at her. I wanted to tell her everything I was feeling, the anger, the hurt, the betrayal. But I didn't. I couldn't. Instead, I stood up, my legs feeling weak, and I walked toward her. "I saw everything," I said softly. Jennifer's eyes flickered, a hint of panic flashing behind them, but she quickly masked it. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice laced with false innocence. "Don't lie," I said, my voice harder now. "I saw the texts. I saw you with him tonight. You think I'm stupid?" She opened her mouth to speak, but the words wouldn't come. I could see her struggling, trying to figure out what to say, what excuse to offer this time. But I wasn't interested in her excuses. I had heard them all before. I had already been living her lies for too long. "You don't get to lie anymore," I said, my voice steady, though every word felt like it was tearing me apart inside. "I trusted you, Jennifer, but you've destroyed that trust. You've destroyed everything we had, and now I'm done." Jennifer didn't respond. She just stood there, staring at me, her face unreadable. I could see the cracks in her facade, the guilt starting to seep through. But it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough for me to forgive her. I had been betrayed, and now I had to face the reality of what that meant. The silence between us stretched longer than I could stand. Jennifer was standing in front of me, her expression a mix of guilt and defiance, but there was no apology, no regret in her eyes. She didn't say a word, and for a moment, I almost thought she was going to leave again, walk away from the wreckage she had created without a second glance. But instead, she took a shaky breath and spoke. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she began, her voice low, barely above a whisper. "It just happened." Her words hit me like a slap. I had heard enough of these excuses. It just happened. How many times had I said those same words in my head before? How many times had I convinced myself that things would go back to normal, that the trust, the love, the bond we had shared would somehow be enough to fix what was broken? But I had been living a lie, and now, standing here in front of me, Jennifer was repeating that same old refrain. "No, Jennifer," I said, the anger rising in me once more. "It didn't just happen. You made choices. You made decisions, and you went behind my back. You betrayed me, and now you're standing here, trying to justify it." She looked away, her eyes brimming with tears, but I wasn't moved by her emotion. Not anymore. I had been fooled once. I wouldn't let myself fall for it again. "I never meant to hurt you," she said, her voice cracking. "You have to believe me. I've been so confused. Ethan, you made me feel alive again. I thought it was just a fling, a mistake, but I didn't know how to get out of it. I didn't know how to stop it before it went too far." Her words cut through me like a blade. He made me feel alive again. What did that even mean? Was I not enough for her? Had I somehow failed her in ways that I couldn't even see? Was I the one to blame for the emptiness she felt inside? The pain was unbearable, and the more she spoke, the deeper it cut. Every word she said seemed to dig the wound deeper, exposing parts of me that I had never wanted to see, parts of myself I couldn't ignore any longer. "You don't get to make excuses for this," I said, my voice trembling with a mixture of fury and disbelief. "You don't get to say that you didn't know how to stop it. You knew exactly what you were doing. You chose him over me, over everything we've built." She wiped away a tear, but it didn't seem to help. Her eyes were hollow, her face a mask of regret. I know I've ruined everything. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know what to say. You can't fix it, I said harshly, the words coming out before I could stop them. You can't take back what you did. You can't undo the betrayal. No matter how many tears you shed, you can't erase what's been done. Jennifer stepped closer to me, her hand reaching out, but I pulled away. I couldn't let her touch me. Not now. Not when everything had changed. I felt sick, like I was suffocating under the weight of the lies, the secrets, the truth that was now out in the open. I don't even know who you are anymore, I muttered, shaking my head in disbelief. The woman I thought I married, she's gone. You're a stranger to me now. The words felt like a punch to my gut. I wasn't sure if I had ever truly known her at all. All these years, I had trusted her, loved her, believed that we were building a life together. But now I was left standing in the ruins of it all. My heart was breaking, but the tears wouldn't come. The only thing I felt was anger, raw, unfiltered rage. You think this is all about you? Jennifer asked, her voice rising slightly, as if she were defending herself. You think I wanted this? Do you think I planned on falling for him? It wasn't supposed to happen this way. I don't care how it was supposed to happen, I snapped. It happened, and now you have to deal with the consequences. Jennifer recoiled at my words, her eyes filled with shock. You're not even listening to me. I never meant to hurt you, Mark. I shook my head, my jaw tight. No, you didn't mean to hurt me. But you did. You did hurt me. You didn't think about what it would do to me. You didn't think about us. All that matters to you is you. It was clear now. She was trying to manipulate the situation, trying to make me feel sorry for her. But I wasn't going to fall for it. I wasn't going to allow her to play the victim when she was the one who had shattered everything. I don't want to hear your excuses anymore, I said, my voice cold and firm. It's too late for apologies. It's too late for any of it. Jennifer stood there in silence for a moment, looking like she was trying to gather her thoughts. But in that moment, I realized something. There was nothing left to say. The damage had been done. There was no going back to the way things were. No amount of talking, no amount of apologies was going to fix the trust that had been broken. I don't know what to do now, Jennifer whispered, her voice barely audible. I've lost you, haven't I? I didn't respond right away. Instead, I took a deep breath, my mind racing. What was I supposed to do? Could I really walk away from her? Could I really let go of everything we had? The thought of starting over was terrifying, but staying in this toxic relationship was even worse. I don't know what's left for us, I said, my voice quieter now, the anger starting to fade, replaced by a profound sense of emptiness. Maybe we've reached the end. Jennifer's face twisted in sorrow. Please don't say that, she begged. I can fix this. I can make it right. I shook my head, the finality of it all sinking in. No, Jennifer, you can't fix it. It's over. And with that, I turned away from her. It was the hardest thing I had ever done, but I knew it was the right decision. I couldn't stay with someone who had betrayed me so completely. No matter how much it hurt, no matter how much I still loved her, I knew I had to let go. The house felt empty as I walked out of the room, the silence settling in around me. And as the door closed behind me, I realized that I had finally reached the point of no return. There was no coming back from this. This was the end. The silence in the house was suffocating. The door closed behind me with a soft click, and the weight of the decision I had just made settled heavily on my chest. I had told her it was over. I had walked away from the wreckage of our marriage, and now, for the first time in a long while, I was alone. The house felt vast and cold, empty without the presence of her lies or her smile that had once felt like home. I didn't know where I was going or what I was supposed to do. Everything felt uncertain, like the ground beneath me was shifting, and I had no choice but to keep moving, even if I didn't know where I was headed. As I walked down the quiet street, the reality of what had just happened started to sink in. I had finally made the choice to leave her, to walk away from everything we had built together. It wasn't easy. It wasn't something I had wanted, but it was necessary. I couldn't keep living in a world where my trust was broken every time I turned my back. But the question that plagued me now wasn't just about Jennifer. It was about me. Who was I without her? What was I supposed to do now that the person I'd shared my life with was no longer the person I thought she was? How could I rebuild after the devastation she had left in her wake? The cold air bit at my skin as I continued to walk aimlessly, the weight of the situation pulling me down further with every step. I thought about the anger that had flooded me when I confronted her, how my words had come out sharper than I had intended, how I had tried to hold on to my dignity while she stood there, looking helpless and broken. But I couldn't stay angry forever. Anger had its place, but I knew I had to move beyond it. It was time to heal, even if that meant facing the pain head-on. I took a deep breath and stopped walking, standing at the edge of a park. The lights from the nearby street lamps flickered softly in the distance, casting long shadows across the ground. For a moment, I stood still, listening to the quiet rustle of leaves in the wind, trying to ground myself in the present moment. The truth was, I didn't know what I was supposed to do next. But I knew one thing. I couldn't go back to the life I had before. Not after everything that had happened. The lies, the betrayal, the hurt. It was too much to ignore, too much to pretend had never happened. I needed to start fresh. But how? Where did I even begin? As the night stretched on, the feeling of emptiness grew. I wasn't sure what the future held, but I knew I couldn't live in the past. Not anymore. I turned and began walking back, my mind racing. What would I tell people when they asked? How would I explain this to friends and family who had known us as a couple for years? The thought of facing their questions, their pity, was overwhelming. But I had to face it. I had to face them, face myself, and figure out what kind of man I wanted to be moving forward. The decision to leave Jennifer had been hard. But now, the hard part was just beginning. The healing. The rebuilding. And as much as I hated the uncertainty, I knew it was the only path forward. As I reached my front door again, I felt a strange sense of resolve. It wasn't peace, not yet, but it was the first step toward finding it, toward finding myself again. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. The house felt different now. It no longer held the warmth of familiarity, the scent of home, cooked meals, or laughter. The space seemed hollow, as if it were no longer mine, as if Jennifer had taken everything with her when she left. The memories that once filled this place now felt distant and cold, like echoes of a life that was slipping away. I stood in the living room for a long time, staring at the empty walls. The photographs that once adorned them now felt like distant reminders of a version of myself that no longer existed. Everything I had built, everything I believed in, had been shattered in an instant. The betrayal was still raw, still fresh, but I knew I had to move forward. I couldn't stay in this limbo forever. I sat down on the couch, my hands resting on my knees, and let out a long, heavy sigh. The silence in the room pressed against me, the weight of everything I was feeling becoming too much to bear. I had always prided myself on being strong, on being able to handle anything life threw at me. But this was different. This was personal. The betrayal wasn't just about Jennifer and Ethan. It was about my own sense of self. I had trusted her with everything, my heart, my future, and now I was left with nothing but a sense of betrayal and emptiness. I had built my life around her, around us, but now I was forced to rebuild from scratch. I had to rediscover who I was outside of her, and I had no idea where to begin. I thought about reaching out to my friends, but the idea of telling them the truth felt too overwhelming. They would ask questions I wasn't ready to answer. They would want to know the details, the reasons behind everything. But the truth was, I didn't even know the answers. How could I explain what had happened when I still didn't fully understand it myself? I stood up and walked over to the window, staring out at the dark street below. The world outside seemed so distant, so far removed from the chaos I was experiencing inside. People went about their lives, oblivious to the storm that was raging inside me. How could everything feel so normal for them while my world was falling apart? But I knew I couldn't keep dwelling on the past. I couldn't keep asking myself why Jennifer had done what she had done. The answers wouldn't change anything. I couldn't change her, and I couldn't change what had happened. All I could do now was move forward. The thought terrified me. Starting over felt like an impossible task. Where did I even begin? What was I supposed to do with the pieces of my life that were left? I went into the kitchen and made myself a cup of coffee. The act felt mechanical, like I was going through the motions of living without actually feeling alive. The coffee was hot and bitter, a reminder that life went on, whether I was ready for it or not. As I sipped the drink, my phone buzzed on the counter. It was a text from my brother, Ryan. "Hey man, you good? Haven't heard from you in a while. Let me know if you want to talk." I stared at the message for a moment. Ryan had always been there for me, through everything. We'd shared our lives, our struggles, our triumphs. But this felt different. I wasn't sure if I was ready to talk to anyone yet. I didn't want to burden anyone with my pain, especially when I didn't even know how to deal with it myself. I texted back a simple response. "I am okay. Just taking some time to figure things out." I knew it wasn't the truth, but I wasn't ready to tell him everything. Not yet. Maybe one day, when I had it all figured out, I could explain everything. But right now, I needed time. Time to heal. Time to find myself again. After sending the text, I put my phone down and walked to the door. I needed to get out of the house. The walls were closing in on me, and I couldn't breathe. I needed to feel the world outside, to remind myself that life still existed beyond the pain I was feeling. I grabbed my jacket and left the house, stepping out into the cool night air. The city was quiet, the streets empty except for a few cars passing by. I wasn't sure where I was going, but I knew I had to keep moving. I couldn't stand still. I couldn't let myself get lost in the pain, not when there was still a world to explore. As I walked down the street, I thought about Jennifer. I thought about the good times, the moments we had shared. For a brief second, I allowed myself to remember the person she used to be, the woman I had fallen in love with. But the thought was fleeting. The betrayal was too fresh, too raw. I couldn't let myself get lost in those memories, not when they were tainted by the truth. I turned a corner and found myself at the park. The trees were swaying in the wind, their leaves rustling softly. I sat down on a bench, staring out at the empty playground. It felt peaceful here, away from the chaos of my home, away from the reminders of what had happened. But even in the peace, the emptiness lingered. What was I supposed to do now? How could I move on from the life I had built with Jennifer? How could I rebuild when everything I had known had been destroyed? The questions lingered in my mind, unanswered. But for the first time in days, I allowed myself to breathe. I didn't have the answers yet, and maybe I never would. But I knew one thing. I couldn't keep running from the truth. I couldn't keep pretending everything was okay when it wasn't. I had to face it head on. The road ahead would be difficult. The pain would linger. But I couldn't stay stuck in the past. I had to move forward, even if it meant facing the unknown. Even if it meant walking into a future that was uncertain, filled with questions I didn't have answers to. As I sat there, alone in the park, I made a decision. I was going to heal. I was going to find myself again. And no matter how hard it got, no matter how much pain I had to endure, I was going to keep moving forward. It was time to let go of the past. It was time to embrace the future. The sun was beginning to rise as I walked back home, the lights spilling across the empty streets, signaling the start of a new day. The air was crisp and clean, and with each step, I felt a little lighter. I had spent the night alone in the park, wrestling with my emotions, trying to come to terms with everything that had happened. And though I hadn't found all the answers, I realized that perhaps it wasn't about finding them all at once. Maybe it was about taking small steps, one at a time, until I reached a place where I could breathe again. The truth was the pain was still there. I could still feel the ache in my chest every time I thought about Jennifer, about what had been lost. But I also realized something important. I wasn't defined by my past. I wasn't defined by her. I had a life, a future, and it was still mine to shape. When I walked back through the door of the house, it felt different. It was still empty, still filled with the ghosts of what had been, but it no longer felt like a prison. It felt like a place I could begin to rebuild. It was a space, a starting point. The walls no longer held the weight of betrayal. They were just walls, and the air inside was mine to fill with something new. I grabbed a towel from the bathroom and splashed my face with cold water, trying to shake off the last remnants of sleep. My reflection in the mirror was still that of a man who had been hurt. I could see the exhaustion in my eyes, the signs of sleepless nights, and too much thinking. But beneath it all, there was a flicker of resolve. A spark that reminded me that I was still here, still breathing, and still capable of moving forward. I picked up my phone, looking at the few messages I had received since the night before. One was from Ryan, asking if I was okay. Another was from a friend who hadn't heard from me in a while, wondering if I want to grab a drink sometime. I thought about replying, but then I stopped. I wasn't ready to talk about it just yet. I wasn't ready to explain everything to anyone. I needed more time. Time to figure out how I felt. Time to find the strength to open up again. I decided to take a walk through the city just to clear my head. As I walked, I couldn't help but think about how strange it was to feel both empty and full at the same time. I had been betrayed by the one person I had trusted the most. And yet, in the aftermath, I was realizing that I still had the power to make choices for myself. That was something Jennifer had never taken away from me. She had tried to take my trust, my peace, my stability, but she hadn't taken my ability to choose who I wanted to be. And that was what I needed now, to choose. To choose how I would live in the wake of everything that had happened. Would I let this experience define me, or would I rise above it? As the day wore on, I realized that I wasn't looking for closure from Jennifer anymore. I wasn't waiting for an apology, for some grand gesture to make things right. I had already made my decision. I'd already walked away. The closure was mine to create. It didn't come from her or anyone else. It came from within me. I met up with a friend later that afternoon, someone I hadn't seen in months. We grabbed coffee and talked about everything but the one thing on my mind. For the first time in days, I felt a sense of normalcy. I was still connected to the world, still capable of having conversations that weren't tainted by betrayal or heartbreak. But deep down, I knew that healing wasn't going to be quick. It wasn't going to happen overnight. It would take time, and it would take patience with myself. There would be moments when the pain would hit unexpectedly, when I would miss her, when I would wonder if I had made the right choice. But in those moments, I had to remind myself that I wasn't alone. I had people who cared about me, and I had the strength within me to keep moving forward, even when the road felt uncertain. As the days passed, I started to find my rhythm again. I focused on the things I could control, my work, my health, my friendships. I surrounded myself with people who lifted me up, people who reminded me that I was worthy of love and respect. I stopped checking my phone for messages from Jennifer. I stopped waiting for her to reach out, to apologize, to try and fix what she had broken. I realized that her actions no longer had the power to define me. There were times when I still felt a pang of regret. I still questioned whether I had made the right choice, whether there was something I had missed, something I could have done differently. But in the end, I knew that the decision to walk away was the right one. I couldn't keep living in a relationship that was built on lies. I couldn't keep holding on to something that was already broken. I had to let go. I had to give myself permission to move forward. The process wasn't easy. It never is. But each day, I felt a little bit stronger. Each day, the weight of the betrayal became a little less heavy. I began to rediscover parts of myself that I had forgotten. The parts of me that had nothing to do with Jennifer. The parts of me that were whole on their own. I knew it would take time, but I was no longer afraid of the future. I wasn't afraid of being alone. I wasn't afraid of the unknown. I had survived the worst of it, and I was still standing. The road ahead was mine to choose, and I would walk it with my head held high. This was my journey, and it had only just begun.